Both hugs. Shit. With all this craziness, all these changes, it's a lot of change. Yeah. It really is. It really is a lot of stuff. It's amazing. But I'm good. Yeah.
It's roaring here.
It is. It's going to be a big crowd tonight.
Formats. Yeah, no. Some candidates in the audience need to be honest.
You're having a technical difficulties, so I'm not able to change the speaker laptop right now. I've been trying my best to get to it by your resolution, but I'm trying to mitigate the issue. What do you mean? The sound for your video isn't going to be coming from the Bluetooth speaker, it'll be coming from the computer, and we'll figure out.
Yeah, we just put a microphone next to it.
Yeah, grab the microphone.
That's what we did last time.
Yep.
I used to sing a lot in churches, and so I had to yeah, because a lot of times it didn't go through the regular thing, so you just took all that. And so.
Never early.
Karima, you just take one of the microphones and put it right over there.
Oh, I get like 2 minutes this time. I'm actually kind of disappointed how early I am right now.
You can go all back.
I felt like it's getting washed, though.
It was awesome. Yeah. Great time.
You don't tell me.
No, one of my kids had next door. He has that. He has I felt bad because I could talk to him pretty well.
Yeah.
If I could have gotten there earlier, but I was in a meeting when they called, and it was like an hour later.
Oh, maybe you're traveling or something.
Okay. You should have done press all the programs.
House committee.
Thank you.
You ready?
Oh, you know who it is. You know Isaiah.
You all ready? You guys ready? Will you all please stand? The Monday, February 11th Common Council meeting is now in session. Our invocation is by Pastor Jonathan Anster. Anderstrom of Calvary Baptist Church. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Will you pray with me? Heavenly Father, your word says that our days are numbered. We have such a short time to make an eternal difference. None of us here want our days to be spent in vain. This council especially does not want their decisions tonight to be made in vain. We pray, God, against the violence that is in our city. May the heartbroken cries of mothers no longer pierce the midnight silence. And so together we pray for our city, right here at this moment, all of us in this room. Give us wisdom, God. We don't know what to do about the homeless. We don't know what to do about this violence. We ask for your mighty help and your supreme wisdom. We pray that South Bend will experience no further ruin or destruction within its borders, but that our city gates may proudly proclaim peace and praise to you, God. Thank you, God, for raising up these servant leaders. I'm so grateful for Mayor Pete, his staff, and these council members. I'm thankful for their love for the people of South Bend, their compassion for the poor and the destitute. And I'm thankful for their desire for justice and fairness for all. I pray that the decisions made by these council members tonight will be guided by your affections, God, and by your discretion. Answer these prayers, O Lord, for your great name's sake. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. If you would, please turn your cell phones to silent. We lost our clerk. Miss Fowler, could you do roll call?
Councilmember Preston.
Here.
Councilmember McBride.
Present.
Councilmember Brody.
Here.
Councilmember Jessica.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Morty.
Present.
Councilmember Furley.
Here.
Vice President White.
Present.
President Scott.
Present.
9 present.
Thank you. Is there a report on subcommittee and minutes, please?
To the Common Council of the City of South Bend, the subcommittee has inspected the minutes of the January 28, 2019 meeting of the council and found them to be correct. Therefore, we recommend the same be approved.
Motion to accept?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We will now turn to special business. Ms. Fowler, would you read 1905, please?
1905, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, honoring and thanking Lucky Resnick for several decades of devoted service to Transpo.
Thank you. Are there presenters tonight?
Yes, Oliver Davis, 6th District Councilman, 1801 Nash Street, member of Transpo for 15 years with Lucky Day. Glad to be here.
And Jake Teshkus, 5th District Councilman, 2419 Cheshire Drive, board member of Transpo as well.
Thank you.
What we would do, instead of having Lucky come up here at this present time, we would like for you to just read all of this, and then when we have time to make comments, then we will invite him to come.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Bill number 1905. A resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, honoring and thanking email Lucky Resnick for several decades of devoted service to Transpo. Whereas email Lucky Resnick was first appointed to the South Bend Public Transportation Board of Directors on July 12, 1967. And whereas on October 10, 2016, the South Bend Common Council unanimously passed a resolution number 4604-16, public honoring Emil Lucky Resnick for approximately 50 years of faithful service as a member of Transpo's Board of Directors and for his exemplary dedication to the South Bend. And whereas 7 of the 9 members of the current Common Council signed that resolution, and whereas Lucky's accomplishments bear repeating upon the occasion of his retirement from the Transpo Board of Directors. Whereas during Lucky's time with Transpo, it transitioned from private to municipal ownership, expanded service, and added transfer stations in South Bend and in Mishawaka. And whereas in October 2010, Transpo opened the Emil Lucky Resnick Operations Administration and Maintenance Facility at 1401 South Lafayette Boulevard on the site of the former Studebaker manufacturing plant, where it became the first transit building in the country to receive a platinum certification by the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, known as LEED, for using a geothermal heating system and solar panels. And whereas the Transpo facility named in Lucky's honor was one of the first buildings to be located in Ignition Park as a part of the former Brownsville site, and
Whereas under Lucky's leadership and with the Transpo board and staff, Transpo continues to reduce fuel usage, improve operating efficiencies, and implement positive service improvements reflecting the very best of innovative ideas. And whereas in 2016, with the assistance of Lucky's leadership, Transpo received the 2015 Impact Award from the South Shore Clean Cities for its initiative on compressed natural gas facility, just one of many awards and honors received by Lucky over the years. And whereas Emil Lucky Resnick is a very proud alumnus of Indiana University, and for his service with the Indiana University Alumni Association, the IUSB Board of Advisors, the past president of the IU South Bend Board, Lucky has been awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award, the IUAA President's Award, and the Sue H. Talbot Distinguished Hoosiers for the Higher Education Member Award. And whereas among Lucky's other awards are the Outstanding Hoosier Award, presented by Governor Mitch Daniels, the Key to the City of South Bend, presented by Mayor Stephen H. Lickey, and commendations from many other local and state officials. And now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of South Bend as follows. Section 1. The South Bend Common Council proudly honors and thanks Emil Lucky Resnick for over 5 decades of dedicated service to the City of South Bend. Section 2. The Common Council recognizes that during those 50-plus years, Lucky's vision and dedication to excellence has enabled Transpo to enhance the quality of life for countless individuals. Section 3. The Common Council also recognizes and thanks Lucky's wife, Shirley, for graciously tolerating the many nights when Lucky was not at home due to Transpo business, together with the times that he had to travel. Section 4. The Common Council wishes Lucky and his family the very best during his retirement. And Section 5. This resolution shall be in full force and effect from after its adoption by the Common Council and approval by the Mayor.
Thank you.
It's truly an honor to have served with Lucky Resnick all of my 15 years on the South Bend Transportation Board. And we've traveled a lot. Traveled with him and his wife Shirley. We've gone different places. Got stuck in the airport in Cincinnati all day long, coming back from D.C. We had lunch together, and then airlines gave us dinner together, and then we finally flew out, the last flight out from Cincinnati in here, and as it bounced through the air, I was basically holding his hands as we both were coming through. And our luggage didn't even come back that night. We had to go back and get our luggage. And had a good time talking, hearing all his many stories. You're talking about John Bordier stories, I'm telling you. Lucky has story after story after story. He kept us throughout the airport all together. It's been an honor to be with him and to be with Shirley. And so it's just been a great, before you go off into the retirement world of Transpo, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all the lessons you've taught me, you've taught us. I'm just honored to name my building after you because you have served it. You epitomized transportation here. We were the first ones here in the state, and it's because of you and your buddies back in the old building, and that did all of that. So just want to say thank you to you.
Excellent. Jake, any other words?
Yeah, so I've only known Lucky for a relatively short amount of time, given his 52 years of service on the Transpo Board and to the city of South Bend, but I can tell you that his legacy weighs on me as a young buck coming up, and hoping to make the same kind of impact that Lucky has made, and hearing stories about doing business, Transpo Board meetings up in the old hayloft, and how Transpo started and where it's at now. Just thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you've done for our city, and Shirley, thank you as well, because I know that it is a team effort for sure. So thank you.
Councilman Davis, do you want anybody from the family to say anything at this time, or?
Lucky? Do you have a mobile?
I don't know how far that's going to go.
Yeah. We don't have a mobile.
With the one on the desk work,
Can we unwind that one?
right here. This one looks good.
He's making it.
You got it here.
Sir, if you'd state your name and address?
Just state your name and address and begin.
Okay. Emil Lucky Resnick, 6241 Chaucer Court, South Bend, Indiana. It's my pleasure to be here this evening, and I thank you all for attendance and some of these very kind words you've given us. And my wife Shirley, she's a little shy about coming up here. She shouldn't be. She's a school teacher, you know. That's the background. Okay, so would you like to say a few words?
She is shy, Lucky.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, I want to thank everyone that served with me on the board of the various organizations, and how much we have gained in what we're doing and how we upgraded everything. And it's been a real pleasure. The pleasure's been all mine, and the mayor's been a big help. And he's leaving town tomorrow, I think I heard on TV, and I don't think we're going to let him do that. We're going to have a cup of coffee together. But it's been a real joy, and I have a great feeling for. I look around and I see all these different people from the various groups, and recognize them. And IUSB, I served on those boards too, and enjoyed that. And Shirley also went to IUSB and got her degree. And I just want to say thank you to everybody here. And it's been a real joy, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Sure. Yeah, you can move those young legs, Oliver.
All right, you can turn around so you know.
Russ. Thank you. What I would like to do is turn it over to the public right now. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of this, please come to the podium. There we go. This is a young man.
Pete Buttigieg, Mayor with offices on the 14th floor of this building. Just quickly want to add my voice to the chorus of people who appreciate Lucky Resnick and everything that he has done. There's not a transpo available to take me to my trip tomorrow, but I have relied on it often, and of course, every time I'm home, looking out my window at the transpo coming by, I think about all of the work that has gone into that service in so many other ways, including the passion for IU that Lucky has shown. So, Lucky, by the way, I would also add, I believe it didn't come up tonight, but service to the country as well as to the community, for which we're very appreciative. So, thank you very much, Lucky.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jatin Kane, Department of Public Works, offices on the 13th floor of this building. I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the board for Transpo, and I wanted to, again, just say thank you to Lucky Resnick. Over the past couple of years, he's been a great mentor and voice of reason at Transpo, and we appreciate his service and dedication to the board. He will truly be missed, and we wish him all the best in whatever he intends to do next. But again, we just want to say thank you for his long-standing service to the board.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of Resolution 1905? Your name and address, ma'am.
Elizabeth Bennion, 1507 Sunnymead Avenue, South Bend, and I'm a faculty member and director for the American Democracy Project at IU South Bend. And I just wanted to say how delighted we are to claim Lucky as an alum of IU, and also to thank him for all of his service to IU South Bend. We're so glad that that was part of the resolution, because we appreciate so much all of the effort that he has put into making our university the great place that it is, and also to thank him for the example he sets for our students as a devoted servant leader. So thank you and congratulations, Lucky.
Thank you, Doug. Anyone else? Anyone wishing to dare cross Oliver to speak against? Seeing none, we'll turn it back to the council. We'll start with the 2nd District. Would you like to say anything, Ms. Preston?
Absolutely. Lucky, I haven't had the pleasure of working with you directly, but I do have to say, are you lucky or are we lucky to have had you here for so long? I mean, 50 years. That is an incredible accomplishment for anything. But to know how you have shaped our transportation system, you will forever be remembered. We appreciate you. Thank you.
I emulate those same sentiments, Lucky. Always hearing over the years about your service to the city has been very delightful, and I just wish you nothing but blessings, and thanking your wife for putting up with the long years and hours and time away from home to shape the transportation in the city of South Bend and throughout the country. So thank you so much, and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you so much for your many, many, many years of public service, and in particular, your leadership. It's one thing to serve on a board, it's one thing to step up to that next level of leadership. And when asked, you responded, and you responded enthusiastically. And I do think, I think back to just placing the facility in its current location, our improved facility. You took an early gamble on that. Your board took an early gamble on that location. And now look what it's opened up in terms of what we now call the Renaissance District. So who knew? I think you knew. And your heart and your leadership got that done in a time when it wasn't particularly a well-supported decision. So thank you for taking that risk and bringing the rest of the board on with that. I think the fruits of that decision will just, as things are developed there, it'll be very exciting for you and for the city of South Bend to see what a key decision can open up. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out tonight as well. And then just the level of outstanding and exemplary facilities that you have shepherded through, and the many, many upgrades to the service delivery. I think we are overall, in my capacity on the MACOG Commission, we look to the city of South Bend and its leadership in this area, and we are the envy of other communities in how we deliver this service, and that is in no small part due to your leadership. And then, if I might pivot to your wife, thank you for sharing him with us all of these years, and your support of his love of service. That's to be commended as well. So thank you both this evening.
Thank you, Councilperson Bowden. Councilmember Gordon.
I was fortunate enough to serve on Hoosiers for Higher Education with Lucky. Sue Talbot, who became one of the trustees, came to town as an employee of Indiana University, and she set up or asked us to get involved in what was to be Hoosiers for Higher Education. And Lucky, more than anyone, enthusiastically embraced that role of advocacy for Indiana University in general, and specifically IUSB. And I don't think that IUSB would be what it is today without Lucky's input down there in the legislature. The bus trips we took every year on Indiana Day down there were a lot of fun, and that was one occasion where I listened instead of talked, because there was so much to learn from Lucky and how he went about getting something done. And anyway, it's been a pleasure to know you, and a pleasure to work with you, and a big thank you is in order to you.
Thank you so much for your service.
Okay. Lucky, it's just so wonderful to be in this position this evening to say thank you for all of your hard work and your commitment, not only to the city, but to IUSB. I can recall also taking those bus trips down to the State House, and you were always there. I can't recall a time that I did not hear your name or did not hear someone speak of your benefits to the university, for which I'm very grateful. Just discovered today your first name. It's always been Lucky. And I said, oh, that is just a very exciting name to be called Lucky. So I consider it an honor to now know your full name, but you will always be Lucky to me. So thank you so much, and best wishes.
Finally, Lucky me. Thank you so much for your service, not only to the city, to the region, but also to the country, as the mayor has stated. We appreciate that. I look at all the awards and everything that you've gotten. We actually debated about, shooting off fireworks or something to kind of, make our humble resolution a little bit better. But you are, again, in our history and in the record books for the city. So thank you so much, and thank you to your wife as well. We appreciate that service, and it's what we try to emulate up here, is try to do right for the city. So thank you so much. Presenters, anything else that you'd like to add?
I also thank my wife and thank Councilman here for picking up Lucky and making sure they were here tonight. They've transported so many people. It was an honor to have them being transported tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So, Council, what's your pleasure?
Motion to adopt by acclamation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Passes. Thank you, Councilman Teshka and Councilman Davis. Ms. Fowler, would you please read 1914?
1914, a second resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, previous resolution 4637-17, again strongly endorsing and recommending a study for a pilot employment program to reduce panhandling within the City of South Bend.
Thank you. Is there presenters?
So motion to hear the second, the substitute version.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Please proceed. Your name and address, sir. And
Again, I'm Oliver Davis. I'm 6th District Councilman, 1801 Nash Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46613. Glad to be presenting this resolution along with.
My name is Karen L. White, South Bend Common Council at large member, 1912 Melbourne Way, South Bend, Indiana.
thank you.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
We would like to bring the substitute bill, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, previously Resolution 4637-17, again, strongly endorsing and recommending a study for a pilot employment program to reduce panhandling within the City of South Bend. Whereas on June 12, 2017, the South Bend Common Council passed Resolution number 4637-117, strongly endorsing and recommending implementation of a pilot employment program to reduce panhandling within the City of South Bend and requesting funding within the 2018 City of South Bend budget for such a pilot program. And whereas the purpose of that resolution was to reduce the practice of personally soliciting money from others in public places known as panhandling, which can be uncomfortable, awkward, and unpleasant for the person being solicited, as well as being a loss of dignity for the solicitor. And
Whereas the Mayor of South Bend approved the resolution on June 9, 2017, and whereas the recommended pilot program was not implemented as requested by Resolution 4637-17, and whereas the City Administration of Indianapolis under Mayor Joe Hochstead has this year of 2019 seized the opportunity to become a national leader and for the city in Indiana, for the first city in Indiana. The city administration proposed funding in the amount of $150,000 to implement a similar program to be paid from funds received from extending parking meter times, and whereas South Bend's prior resolution acknowledged programs in other cities to address panhandling, such as installing bright parking style meters where visitors and residents can donate to local nonprofits rather than handing cash to panhandlers or providing gift cards and mittens to those in need. And whereas South Bend's prior resolution also acknowledged programs initiated in Portland, Maine, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, the same programs upon which the Indianapolis proposal is based, which offer to pay panhandlers the city's minimum wage plus lunch for a 6-hour workday, maintaining public parks and spaces, after which social services and job training are made available. And whereas the estimated cost for the Portland Opportunity Crew during its first year, 2017, was $41,000, with an initial appropriation from the city of $25,000 in May 2017 to fund a pilot program for 36 weeks. And
whereas during the pilot phase, police in Portland picked up 310 bags of trash and collected 214 hypodermic needles, and whereas a similar program in Albuquerque called There's a Better Way began with a budget of $50,000 in its first 2 years and has provided 4,248 day jobs, housed
21 homeless residents, connected 414 people with additional work, and provided mental health substance abuse services to 355 people. And whereas both programs are now being funded in large part through donations, and whereas other cities that have enacted or considered similar programs include Chicago, Dallas, Lexington, Kentucky, Spokane, Tucson, Portland, Oregon, Denver, Monterey Valley, California, Austin, Amarillo, Texas, Ocean Springs, and Indianapolis. And whereas it is now past time for the City of South Bend to actively explore and fund a similar pilot program which will give the people the opportunity to improve the community for fair compensation instead of incurring stigma and discomfort of begging for money, provides people with the dignity to be accorded every individual in need, and reduces the frustration and irritation of persons being solicited for funds. And whereas this resolution is being considered early in 2019 in order to provide the city administration and the South Bend Common Council a full and fair opportunity to fund a pilot program as soon as possible, similar to those identified herein. Now therefore be resolved by the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana as follows. Section 1. The Common Council hereby again expresses its strong endorsement of and recommendation for the study in South Bend, Indiana for a program similar to Portland, Maine's Opportunity Crew, Albuquerque's There's a Better Way, and to the efforts which are going on in the city of Indianapolis to address constructively and innovatively the social problem of panhandling within the city of South Bend.
Section 2, the Common Council hereby states that it again requests and encourages the City of South Bend administration to commence a study of such a pilot program in cooperation with other entities, so South Bend will remain a leader in addressing the issues of homelessness in the state of Indiana and throughout the United States. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its adoption by the Common Council and approval of the mayor. I would like to add that this resolution is really asking not only the Common Council but the administration to start discussions and to look at the best practices and that we have within our own state, the state of Indiana, the state capital, what they're doing to really look at panhandling. And I think that we are in an excellent position to have such a discussion. I do know that members of the administration, that we did reach out to them, as well as some of the social service providers. And so we ask for your consideration and your approval at this time.
Prior to that, we would like to hear some comments from Attorney Bob Palmer regarding this. Go ahead.
Just to update you on the status of the Indianapolis proposal. It was given its first reading at the end of January. It was assigned to the Finance Committee of the City Council of Indianapolis. Last week it passed the Finance Committee and will be heard by the full County City Council at the next meeting next week. The amount earmarked for this pilot program in Indianapolis is $150,000.
Okay, thank you. Is that...
No, we have, we'd like for you to just go to here in this clip. We'll go to our...
Okay.
And Green has the experience and resources to aggressively fight unfair taxes by large and powerful insurance companies. Experience, aggressive, Blackburn Green.
That's a freebie.
Are they offering some money?
Just cleared another hurdle tonight. A city-county council committee approved the measure that would pay people 9 to 11 bucks an hour to clean up our city instead of begging on a corner. Jobs would include picking up trash, planting flowers, and removing graffiti.
An opportunity to
gain employment skills, to build a work history, to, ideally transition into full-time employment here in the community.
That program would cost about $150,000, which would come from the parking meter fund, but not all counselors are behind this plan, saying this is the wrong approach. Measure does need full council approval.
And you see that...
Estridge actually made it possible for me to downsize and upgrade at the same time. The houses are adorable, and I finally got a kitchen. I always wanted.
We're going to work with them, make sure they have housing like this. Yeah. Shimada home. Nah. As you can see, that program is based off the one in the city of Albuquerque, and it's called There's a Better Way. And if you screen up, it says There's a Better Way program. It began in 2015. Really what kicked this off in 2015 is that the Supreme Court made a ruling that changed how municipalities across this country have handled the issue of panhandling, giving us a ruling that wasn't even anything dealing with panhandling or homelessness. It was a ruling about freedom of speech, but it impacted how cities handle anything with speech. And so therefore it impacted how a lot of cities had to change their laws on the books regarding the issue of panhandling. And then what comes up is, what do we do in place? And so the mayor there created this program. He said that he saw a sign and said, we're going to put people to work. So therefore, you see the history of that from the last 2015 in the city of Albuquerque. You can post that, and you go down a section, please, and you will see the community fund feed donations. They collect a lot of it through their donations and through the city. And keep on down. Phase 2, a van in September 2015. They got a van, and they the Battle Ray, and the initial budget of $50,000, as we stated, paid $9 an hour. And they go around and they pick up people to help them out, and they do this in conjunction with one of the local agencies there. So this is not only the city doing it by itself; it is working along with its local agencies. And if you go right up to the very top, if you click on homeless services, click on that. Right down there, go down one more. No, right there it says homeless. No, you up top. On that, there you go. There you go. You click on that, you'll see right on their city website, their city services website, they have all their homeless services right in there. So you can go right to the local services in the city there where they partner together. So that's something that we can look on as we put together all of our homeless areas, because we have done a lot here in the city of South Bend. And as we can tie all of that together that we've been doing, what our city's been doing, and we can encourage everybody else, so you can go through this whole thing and you can see what Albuquerque. So they have taken this, and Indianapolis is doing it now, as you saw the other cities are doing it. And it's a good discussion. Well, I was thinking about doing it in 2019, but that's a rush, even though Indianapolis, they've been dealing with a lot of that because of their NCAA, their Pacers, their Colts, all the different events they have down there. It's a huge thing. So that's why you heard in the discussions disagreements back and forth, because there's not one simple way, to just address panhandling. It's a variety of ideas that you have to put together. And so there's housing first, there's other techniques, and there's mental health. As a licensed social worker, I can see these kind of things coming together. So we're just asking to add to another piece. And a lot of times people say, well, it's not going to work for everybody. No. But like I tell people in baseball, if you can have a bat 30%, which is 300%, that means you struck out 70% of the time, you still make the Hall of Fame with a 300 batting average. And so, because you're not going to get everybody, but if housing first gets this person gets this group, this idea gets this, the more we can have a better ways, we can bring all of our ways together and make our city a stronger city. So that's why we are bringing this back to you, so we can bring this together to encourage our administrators to work together, and we can really take us to the next level here in South Bend. Any final comments?
I would just like to say that in working with administration, there are a number of entities and discussions and recommendations that have come forward. There are a lot of individuals who are beginning and have wrapped their services and programs together to serve not only the homeless, but also to begin to address some of these issues. So our goal is to add this to the mix and say, let's look at this as a possibility. Let's look at this as another option in addressing some of the critical issues in our community.
Thank you. With that, we'll turn it over to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of 1914, please come to the podium. Go ahead.
Jesse Davis, P.O. Box 10205, South Bend, Indiana. I'm in favor of this. I know that it was brought up before, and it's been discussed on several places on social media. Get a lot of reviews from other people that say, come get a real job, this and that. But I'll tell you what, this would be a huge benefit. When the courts made their ruling, basically they stated something that honestly is true. A person standing on a corner asking you to give them money, to donate money to them, is no different than our mayor when he goes out and rings a bell for the Salvation Army at Christmas time. To me, I'd rather have a guy standing on the corner with a sign. Those bells, honestly, no offense to the mayor, those bells are annoying as hell when I come in and out of the store. This will allow a person to come out and make a little bit of money. Are we going to solve the problem completely? No way. Are we going to give somebody money that might go out and buy alcohol or buy drugs? Yeah, probably. But you know what? They might not be going into your local store and stealing because they're going to have a little bit of money to spend. They might be able to get a hot meal. They might be able to put themselves up in a hotel for a couple of nights instead of being on the streets. And they're not going to be on the corner begging. Years ago, and I don't know if it still happens, but I knew a couple local employers from the area that literally would go down to the Center for the Homeless and out in front of the Hope every morning. And they would go there and literally get out of their company vehicle and say, hey, I'm looking for some laborers today. Whether it was somebody to, throw shingles in a trailer from a roofing job or, to go out and pick corn, whatever it was. A lot of local people used to go and actually hire people from those areas. I don't see as much and I don't hear as much of that anymore, but I do think that this will help the issue of seeing those people on the corners, which everybody complains about. And it is pretty scary sometimes when somebody comes up, if you're sitting there and they bang on your car window. And if you haven't seen it here, it does happen, and if you really want to see it in depth, go to Chicago and drive through town, because it's getting really bad there. We were there over the weekend.
Thank you, sir. Next, name and address.
Jason Badicki, 3822 4th Street. The homeless is one of the things I talk about a lot, and anything we can do to help them out is something that we should try to do. And as I'm fond to say, don't let the pursuit of perfection be the enemy of progress, and this is absolutely an opportunity to make some good progress. Again, even if it's only 30%, that's 30% less people on corners. That's 30% people who are going to have at least one good meal that day. That's 30% of those people who are now going to have some pocket in their change to make a decision for themselves and not be out begging. So this is absolutely something we should do, and it's past time to get this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Good evening, David Parker Brooks, 1630 Pulaski Street. I am totally in favor of this resolution. There's a pilot program I think that the council might want to look at in administration in Fort Worth, Texas, where the people are actually employees and they get benefits also in that program, and they also earn vacation time. I think anytime we can give someone opportunity to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, most people will take it. We need to help our city from the bottom, also not only from the top. And I totally agree with this program. Anything that we can do to help our less fortunate citizens. I deal with the homeless all the time in my church. We feed them, we clothe them, we do what we can. And sometimes some of the funds and things get misappropriated, they do. But we give out of the kindness of our hearts. And I think this council and the administration would do the city a great service if we pass this resolution.
Thank you. Name and address, sir.
Maybe Arbuckle. My address is 121 Tuck Street, which is Weather Amnesty. I'm currently homeless. I just moved up here from Texas, and I know the pilot program that they're talking about in Fort Worth. I think it's working good. Panhandling is illegal there. If you get caught, you go to jail, which is not a good thing. They pay people $10 an hour to go out, get on the street, clean up trash, They do it 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. It's helping a lot of people get jobs. They have all the services under one roof. They don't have to go all over the place. It would be a good program. I mean, I see it up here. There's a lot of people panhandling. If it's not going to curb it, it'll take a lot of it off the street. And it'll make the city look a lot better. So that's about it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Jonathan Anderstrom. Our church is at 3001 West Cleveland Road, South Bend. I really appreciate this idea. I had 2 recommendations with it. In our work with the homeless, we found that they do not appreciate getting payments 2 weeks later. I don't know how that works out with the attorney, but we now have a petty cash fund that we pay them immediately when their work is complete. That is very helpful for people in their situation. And also on one little portion, 2 words, 1 word actually, you mentioned in that reading this, provides dignity. God gives dignity to all people. This resolution declares dignity. People already have dignity already. We don't give it. They already have it.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Sharon Benecki, 3822 Ford Street, South Bend. I'm in favor of this. I know there's a lot of people that are going to say it's never going to work. If it helps just 5 people off the street and get them up back where they want to be, it's 5 people. We don't have to worry about freezing at night, weather amnesty, feeding them. I hope that, when it starts working out, that it's expanded a little to include not just the homeless, but maybe those unemployed who are down and out and need that other extra little boost that aren't employable through traditional methods. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Rod Goodchild, 837 South 24th Street, South Bend, Indiana. I'm a landlord, River Park. It's just started out one little place after another. I really believe that you have to reach out to people. And that's what the key to Mayor Pete and his whole campaign running for President of the United States. You have to touch people and understand. It's not easy. It's not easy to always be looked down on. It's not easy when you're just trying to get enough to make a meal, living on a street, under a bridge. And I know that I have lawns that I have to get mowed so they can mow a lawn, and they have a lot of pride in it. They say, hey, I just mowed the lawn. This is great. Give them $10. This kind of makes them feel proud. They go out and shovel, and I shovel them a lot of times what they call a snowbird. I'm down. I just got back from Fort Lauderdale. I try to be as little as possible around here in the winter. And they'll shovel my walk and just do it. And when they see it, we give them a couple of bucks. And it makes you feel a lot better to think you're helping out somebody, encouraging them to do something positive, than just, I run by them. I mean, I've been in Chicago too. I get out of the bus station, where you get from underground at the South Shore, and everybody's in your face. You can't even walk across the street to get to Millennium Park. And I just think that we got to reach out to those less fortunate. That's a message that I always learned when I went to my Sunday school classes. And this is something that if you can get them to work and they do a good job, it gives them a little pride, and maybe they find a little something and maybe get in a kitchen job or something like that. We only can try. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next, name and address.
Carol Shoemaker, 1613 Hildreth Street, South Bend, Indiana. I think even if, we don't know if this program's going to work, but we have to give it a shot. It builds a reputation of our city if they know we're trying to deal with the homeless problem. I think there are people that will participate. I have a friend who works at the homeless center, and there are a lot of people there that will pitch in and help. They're not getting, even if they're not getting paid, they're still good-hearted people that are willing to try. So I think we have to make the effort. I have a son that lives in New York City, and we don't want to become New York City. They have homeless people that live on the subways. There's trash all around. There's rats. It's not very as glamorous as you think. And he just walks to work and rides the subway, but full of homeless and rats. We don't want that. We want to make a shot at trying to make this a more beautiful place.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tanya Burton. I live at 1213 South 35th Street. I lived in South Bend for 15 years before taking time to go work at Boeing in Seattle. And I've seen panhandling from a big city and how they had to address it. And coming back here, my first experience in dealing with the homeless and the houseless has been, during the cold snap, I volunteered with Weather Amnesty, and then also volunteered my time and energy with St. Pat's and some of the other organizations that give services and administer help to the homeless. I have not been downtown and been directly affected by panhandling. I can tell you when people are desperate, they're going to try anything. And I think that if you all decide to move forward on this plan, as opposed to not implementing a plan that was at least approached, to the council in 2017, that I guess never got off the ground, I'd like to, lend my voice of support, but also ask that whatever you all are doing, you make the plan and the details of that plan public, because you are going to have an uphill battle facing people who feel that this is not going to be enough. But I can tell you firsthand, every little bit helps.
All right, thank you. Next, name and address.
Amanda Gobert, Conrad, 1015 College Street, also a candidate for the 2nd District.
We're not talking politics at all for everybody else in the audience.
I'm fully in support of this, though, because we have a huge homeless population in our neighborhood that hang out around that Marathon station, and they're always out asking for money and things like that. And when you talk to them, they actually do want to work. They do want to be part of the community. They do want to be involved, and I think that this is something that if there was a way for them to feel respected by their community, and this would be a great way for the city to reach out to them and help them feel respected and feel like they're part of it.
Thank you.
Samuel Brown, 222 Eastern Bar Street, the city of South Bend. It's a very delicate, sensitive situation, but I like the idea of trying. It's very sensitive. I've been to Philly. I've been to Times Square. Right off of Times Square, it's horrible. We see the glamour of the lights and it's beautiful, but you need to just go to the other end of Times Square where I've been. It's really tough down in there with the homeless, and the same way in Philadelphia. But I don't have the answer. Anything we can do to try to curb the problem, and I just hope that we knock it out of the park.
Thank you
for listening.
With that, anyone wishing to speak against 1914, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we're going to come back to council for comment. We'll start with Mr. Furlick.
Sure, and just say thank you to the sponsors for starting the discussion, or re-engaging the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, same thing. Thank you, Karen and Oliver, for raising the awareness of this situation.
Mr. Teschke.
I think you guys said it, and everybody else who came up said it as well. This is not a cure-all, right? It's something that goes along with. We've got a world-class homeless center for the homeless. We've got talks of a gateway center. Weather Amnesty, it all is the pieces to a puzzle. So thanks for bringing this up. I think when dealing with these kinds of issues, we have to be innovative. So thank you to Oliver and Karen.
Ms. Broden.
I just want to be clear on what I vote on. And so as long as this is a study, as long as it harkens back to our earlier motion that in my opinion, it's more than opinion because it's in the record, but, we strongly endorsed, we recommended implementation of a pilot employment program. It wasn't delivered on, okay? So, despite our approval and the mayor's approval. So, my question, and I think the question that needs to be answered and fairly quickly, and I think this resolution hopefully will spur that
discussion and that accountability across all of us, and that is inclusive of the community, it's inclusive of the folks who normally operate in these sectors, the social service agencies, et cetera. I mean, it has to be collaborative, or frankly, it won't work. But I do think the timeliness of this resolution, I can support it, as long as, words in it that actively explore, actively look at. I am hesitant when we encroach into the area of funding. I'd like to reserve that vote of mine relative to funding within the context of the budget process. So, but I do acknowledge that we need to re-engage in this in a thoughtful discussion about employment opportunities, right, for individuals who are panhandling. I do recognize that we have few low barrier or day employment options available in our community. One of the speakers mentioned that as well. I mean, not much has changed really in 2 years or even 3 years, frankly, during my tenure on the council with regard to creating, more opportunities of low barrier day work opportunities, and so I think that's important. But in the discussion going forward, though, I want to make sure that I want to make sure that we keep our eye on some what I consider some really key goals on this, and that is the advocacy first and foremost across our community for the whole concept of housing first, and that inclusive of the permanent supportive housing, inclusive of the wraparound services that would support those individuals within those scattered housing locations. I also, first and foremost, want to make sure that we are tracking and that we are on top of and pursuing the gateway, the coordinated entry concept. I'm not a huge fan of, narrowing that to a center, but I do think the coordinated entry and the programming that goes with it, and then of course always delivering on our weather and continuing to deliver in a timely manner in our weather amnesty program. So to me, being able to hit, our capacity to kind of keep driving those things forward, I think is important. This has a piece in our portfolio of things to consider. I have no problem with adding it, given what I know of the state of kind of the day labor opportunities are, et cetera. But I do know it's awfully tough to show up at a job and continue to show up at that job if you don't have the housing supports that are there. So I want to make sure that as we pursue our strategies with regard to the homeless, that we not lose sight of those, and that we consider the capacity of local government to deliver those things, or at least to coordinate that strategy. So I will vote in favor of this, but my vote is again wanting us to pursue and continue to pursue what I consider some lead things, and that's not to detract from what I hope my comments aren't read as a detraction from what we thought was a good idea in 2017, and then what I think many of us think is a great idea to pursue tonight. It's just that we have an opportunity to educate, we have an opportunity to point to some really specific strategies that are best practices. And I don't want to lose focus on that. I don't want to lose the funding potential from that, and I want to make sure we get our highest return in terms of the monies we are to allocate toward this issue and the benefit for the intended individuals in our community as a whole. So thank you very much for work on this.
I'd like to thank you for your comments with it. As you know, go ahead, finish.
And in the context of the Health and Public Safety Committee, I think I share a particular responsibility, along with the members of that committee, to help advance this conversation along the goals that I mentioned, but then also the accountability to why, and the due diligence with regard to this proposal tonight and the one previously. So I want to make sure that I'm not, kicking the burden elsewhere. I think there's a real specific area that the burden or the responsibility, if you would, as a council could be held.
Thank you. Ms. McBride?
I think if we continue with the collaborative efforts with the homelessness and the gateways, and now with this resolution that is heading into the right direction for this community, I think that not only would it increase the taxes for having employment, but the income stability of the individuals. So I am in support of the resolution. Also would like to echo, though, but that now it's time to finally have some teeth, and I think now is the time. And I think that what you're proposing is for us to make sure that we all work together with service providers and continue working with administration to get it done. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Preston?
I had the great fortune of being at a listening session the other night on homelessness, and the concept was to actually hear from people who are experiencing homelessness about the issue. And one of those gentlemen spoke tonight. I was really touched by him and many people there. I think that while we're having this discussion, that I would recommend that we do not forget to bring and make sure that people who are experiencing homelessness are at the center of that conversation, that they're a part of that conversation and even driving it, because all of the solutions are there. They understand the barriers, so as we make programming, we create programming, we can eliminate all these mistakes, things that we didn't think of, when we include them in the conversation. So I would encourage that as well. Also, what I learned was deeply affected by one gentleman who got up there and really put us on the spot. He said, you know what? We've been talking about this too long. We talk and talk and talk, and yet people are still on the street. And so I would also encourage, while we need to have good discussion and engage those who are experiencing homeless, that we actually go ahead and set a date to start a pilot, because there's also a way in which when we pilot a program, we can learn more and move, and at the same time we're helping people. That is the message that I got from people who are in these desperate situations. So I want to thank you, Councilman Davis, Councilwoman White, for bringing this back to the table, and make sure that we highly encourage, because again, as council members, we can make recommendations, but we really have to we have to have our city administration to put this in action. So there's many things. We just recently said we're going to raise water rates without having all of the plans that we still have ideas on what other things we can do to help relieve the burden. But we said, nope, we need to start this now, so let's put this on the table. If we can put a date on something like that, I think that when we have people who are really hurting and in need, that we need to put a date and get something started. So that's my recommendation, and again, thank you all for moving this forward.
Finally, as president, going last, you get your thunder stolen. So I want to thank all the council members for their words. Thank you, Councilwoman White and Councilman Davis, for bringing this and resetting this. And I completely agree with just about everybody up here. Regina kind of stole my thunder on that. A plan is not anything without action, and now it's time to take action. Collaboration was said by Ms. McBride and the other ladies on my right, and honestly, it is true. It is a true collaboration. I was thinking of this. It's like, so many people think that the city, I'm just going to go to the city and tell them what to do, and they got to go do it and make the world better. No, it's a collaboration. It's people that are on the street. It's the stakeholders. It's us, council members. It's administration, it's citizens all working together. That's what we need to do. And I completely agree. There's a reset here. Those who have sponsored this one, those who have sponsored the one in the past, please be that leader and drive this forward. So I appreciate you guys, what you've done. Go ahead, you get the last comments.
Okay. I would say that in response to the comments, that it's going to take each and every one of us collectively working with our social providers, working with administration. Work is currently being done when we talk about the gateway information and just pulling all the pieces together and to make sure that those who need to be at the table, that they're at the table and they're being heard. So again, it's going to take the whole community as a whole, but working collaboratively together to address this issue. And there's different pieces to it. And this is just one area that we're encouraging not only the council, but also the administration to look at. And when we put all these pieces together, then we can move forward. But it's not to say that the discussion should not stop. They are occurring, but we have to make sure that they're moving in the right direction as well.
One of the things that I've appreciated about our mayor, as he talks about in his book, A Shorter Way Home, he's emphasizing the strength of a mid-sized city and what a mid-sized city can do across this country. One of the things you got to look at when you talk about homelessness with all these cities, a lot of them are your big cities. The Chicagos, the LAs, and these Albuquerques and 800,000 million. One thing that we can do is how do we address this kind of an issue in a mid-sized city? And that's key. That's key for us to look at now. Where do we do that? I'm working on this at the University of Southern California as I talk to my colleagues as I work on a doctorate. LA, of course, has Skid Row. And so when they ask me the same questions that Councilwoman Broden has asked, they've asked me those questions when I go to meet in our seminars about the financial plans and about all these other things. And they said, what makes you different in South Bend? The key thing is that I tell them is that we are a mid-sized city. And a lot of times in mid-sized city, as Lucky would tell you about transit, is when we go to our national meetings, we go to a different side. You have the big cities, and then you have the smaller processes here. Because fighting for transit in a smaller city is a different ballgame. And in LA, in Chicago, in DC, millionaires ride transit. So it's easy to sell transit. And so in mid-sized cities, it's a different ballgame. In mid-sized cities, is almost a way of shutting it out. And look at Mishawaka. They don't want to, with all due respect to my colleagues over there. It's easy in mid-sized cities to say we don't have an issue. Everybody knows big-sized cities have it. So how do you fight for these kind of things? How do you have these kind of things in mid-sized cities as we look at that? And that's where we want to continue to be that leader. And having Indianapolis look at us and learn from us too.
Right.
And so not us always looking at the big-sized cities for that. And that's one reason why we wanted to energize that back again, to say we are in South Bend and we can be the leader of the state. And let's work on the financial piece. Let's work on all that. We didn't put all that in detail right now because then people say that's not the time. But we want to kick it off again for that. As you saw in the Bedway program, they have tied into a lot of the social services. I believe in that. I'm a licensed social worker, so I understand that. So therefore, I'm glad that Karen White, and thank you for sponsoring this, because this is the time for us to kick this off now. At the beginning of the year, we have all year to discuss it, along with our weather amnesty thing that we just did back in December. So when we get to the summertime, early summer, we can have a plan in place so we don't have to be in the fall trying to deal with all that. So I'm grateful for your comments, and I'm grateful for the people who came up and presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn back to council for
Motion to adopt by acclamation.
Second.
all in favor.
Aye.
All opposed. Thank you. Carries.
Thank you.
Now, tonight is the mayor's annual address to the common council on finances and the general condition of the city pursuant to 2-3.1 of the South Bend Municipal Code. Is there a presenter? There is. The young man from earlier.
All right. Hope I didn't ruin any surprises there. And is there a clicker for the... PowerPoint? Great. All right. Now look at my colleagues. Do we know,
Any presentation?
maybe, Graham, if you could confer with the controller, maybe you guys could work something out, and I'll
Wanna
just
take a 5-minute
talk for a
recess?
while the slides are coming up. Sorry about that.
Do you need a 5-minute recess?
You can take that.
I doubt it'll take that long unless council...
Just take a 3-minute recess. We're
Like,
cool.
all right, 3-minute recess, sounds good.
Cool.
Take a motion?
What's that?
So moved. Hang on a minute. The motion to take a 3-minute recess.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Cool. Thanks. Go for it.
We will return at 8:14. Smoking quickly. I gotta get paid by the word. Up in the game. No, I didn't receive anything either. I know, Joe, you said something, but did we have presentations? I didn't see Well, Joe, he doesn't have to give it to us. He doesn't have to give it to us.
Okay, yeah, but, oh my goodness, real.
You know, Where's the head? I think so too, yeah.
We got 1 minute. Yeah, she said her IUSB intern was up, for a credit, so she thought it was up with us. I'm like, no, you can stay as long as you want. It's great. I don't know what you get. What? I don't know what you get, but...
Oh, yeah.
Oliver Davis. Oliver Davis. How you doing? Okay, Mayor, you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay, Mr. President, thank you for bearing with us while we got that up where it needed to be. And a quick reminder, especially for folks in the public who maybe haven't seen this occasion before, the statute requires annually that the mayor provide an address on the finances and general condition of the city to the council during this February meeting. In prior administrations, this was taken to be the occasion for the city State of the City address. Beginning in 2012, we adopted the practice of making this statutorily required address a little more specifically focused on finances, creating room to have the State of the City address take place a little bit later in the spring at a more convenient time for more people to attend. So with that being said, my goal is to give you an overview of the financial and overall position of the city. And I want to thank our new city controller, Dan Parker, and his team for helping us gather some of this information, and reserve the right to phone a friend if a question comes along that I don't know the answer to. But we'll try to get that addressed either right away here, or we'll come back with information. The overall headline is that numbers are trending in the right direction for our city. There's a caveat on these. These are sourced from the U.S. Census Bureau, and the authoritative numbers they give are every 10 years. So some of these are based on estimates or community surveys that don't have quite the same fidelity as the decennial census, and may actually be revised retroactively. Still, they tell a consistent story, and we're very heartened by that. First of all, the population growth. Even having a positive number is good news for a city that lost a quarter of its population in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And we see that we continue to have that very consistent pace of growth in the estimates over the last few years. Newer in the last couple of years is these indications of growth in income, too. We remain, candidly, overall, what would be considered a low-income city. There are many residents in many neighborhoods that are substantially below U.S. median income, but we've seen it now growing at a rate that's faster than you see nationally. And I also want to point to this poverty rate, again, preliminary estimated numbers, but seeing those reductions, and it might be a little difficult to make out the numbers, but we're talking about a reduction over the last 2 years from 28.3% to 25.4%. The math is pretty easy for a city of 100,000 people. Basically, anytime something changes by 1%, it's 1,000 people. So if these numbers hold, that means something on the order of 3,000 people have been lifted out of poverty in the last few years. Now, an asterisk on that, too, just because you're out of the federal definition of poverty doesn't mean you're living comfortably, and we're trying to have a more expansive view of people who are asset limited and income constrained in our community. Quick recap of some of the agenda items we're going to go through. We'll talk through at a glance of what we did in 2018. I'll give you a financial overview. That'll lead us to 2019, and I want to make sure we take a moment to talk about what we're doing to be ready for 2020 and the fiscal curve that comes with that. So the main focus in 2018 was to make sure that we were making the right kind of investments for our city to meet goals laid out in the priority-based budget process. And members of this council authorized and encouraged initiatives with a particular focus on benefiting neighborhoods, including increased investments in our streets and sidewalks, the Light Up South Bend program that is really that was initiated by council members and has really benefited us all by adding to streetlights for a sense of safety in neighborhoods, development projects throughout our city, as well as an effort to make sure that we not only saw more growth, that our growth was more inclusive. The MySB Parks and Trails program is now in full swing. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And we're also really trying to meet those goals of being an employer of choice, including cleaning up our policies, enabling employees to donate their vacation to one another, time off in a way that encourages volunteerism, and upgrading the consistency and professionalism of performance evaluations for city employees. I want to pause just for a moment to talk about road funding, because we greeted with enthusiasm the decision a couple of years ago to, in the state legislature in Indianapolis, to invest in a gas tax adjustment that gave us more to work with on road funding. The good news is you see a real increase in the amount of road funding that's been available. Each year, largely because of a little conservatism in our budget and also the desire to build up some cash balances, you've seen revenue come in ahead of expenses. Last year, we were able to pave 29 lane miles of road, which is great because the norm had been closer to 20. And I know we're getting into peak pothole season now with that freeze-thaw cycle, and wanted to just draw attention to the number of potholes that we dealt with last year. And, of course, something we hear loud and clear from the council every year, making sure we get as many curbs and sidewalks done as we can. That's the good news. Here's the concern. The state has adjusted the formula for how these motor vehicle highway fund dollars are received. And just as we were jumping for joy when they were increasing the level in 18 compared to 17, we're seeing 19 will actually represent a step down. It has something to do with the way that they're allocating those funds. Now would be a great time to ask members of the General Assembly and the state government whether they're sure that that's the best way to go. I know there are a lot of competing priorities in Indianapolis, but we were really counting in our cities and towns on those road funding mechanisms, and so we're hoping that that will be adjusted in a direction that helps us pave more, not less streets. And we are continuing to work with the state to understand the impact that some of these distribution changes are going to have. But basically what we're seeing is, the good news is, we look at 19 probably higher than it was 2 years ago, and higher than the baseline. But that bump that we saw last year, which we took to be great news for the future, may have been more of a one-time gift from our friends in Indianapolis versus something we could count on every year. Again, just revisiting Light Up South Bend. This is a program that has led to 70 lights most recently installed in the near northwestern River Park neighborhoods. There were some delays due to disaster recovery on Indiana-Michigan Power Crew's ability to complete their installation, but lights have been added, and so have lampposts. And the great thing here is, thanks to technology, we no longer need to invest in wiring the lamppost all the way back to the house, because these solar lampposts don't have to be wired to anything at all. And based on the number of applications that we got, mostly in a target area where the city offered a higher subsidy, it seems to be a popular program and one that we'll continue to see grow. I won't take you through the eye chart on the right. This is just to say that development projects in the city have been very encouraging once again, that they've taken place in every corner of the city of South Bend. And then when we do talk about TIF, the majority of that is infrastructure. So 57% of the money that was released by through TIF, so about $11.7 million, went to projects that were essentially infrastructure in character. The balance went to what we would call economic development projects, like the wharf site, the spec building, J.C. Lauber, and so on, that have gotten some good looks for the city as well. Tax abatements, 6 were offered in 2018. Those are expected to add $4.2 million a year to the tax rolls when the projects that they supported come fully online. And at the end of the day, just out of deals that the city had a role in, we saw over $100 million in private investment, following that general guideline that we really want to see only about 1 out of every $5 in those development opportunities coming from the public, and 489 jobs announced in our city. Also want to highlight our effort on inclusion, including the work of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Christina Brooks, who's really been focusing on a number of ways to make sure that more city workers are able to, or more workers in the city are able to participate in supporting the development of businesses owned by people who have been at a historic disadvantage. Also a reminder of the MySB Parks and Trails Plan. Again, a big thank you to the council for authorizing this. In addition to the park bond and the TIF commitment, about a third of the funding has come through outside sources, from the regional cities grants to federal matches on things like the Coal Line Trail and Bowling Trail project. And in 2018, we saw just all those projects that you saw, from the dog park to the trail completion up by Pinhook. That amounts to just about 10%. But by the end of calendar 2019, you'll see 85%. So these represent all the projects that are completed or underway this year. You've probably already seen some of the dirt moving around the city. So by far the bulk of that's going to happen this year, and of course the balance in 2020 and beyond. So, to the fiscal position of the city of South Bend, and this is something I think is important to understand and sometimes misunderstood because of its complexity. Let's start with the liquidity, which is to say the cash position of the city. Cash on hand has really benefited the city. You could argue that we're on the conservative side in terms of building up cash reserves, but that benefits us because when we're on the credit markets trying to get a good interest rate on your debt, one of the things they look on is how wealthy your community is, and the other is how much cash you have. So if you're a very wealthy community, you can, so to speak, get away with having less cash in the bank at any given time. If you're less wealthy and more low income as we are, then it really helps to have a strong cash balance to demonstrate the creditworthiness of the city. This brings us to our, this still has to get audited because it's 2018, but the current cash holdings of 288%. So what does that actually, sorry, 288 million. What does that actually mean? Well, one way to look at it is how much do you have on hand as a percentage of your expenditures. And so we're about 85% of the total amount of money that flows through the city at any given year. We have about 85% of that amount sitting on hand. And you'll see there's a lot of variation here. From communities like Terre Haute and Carmel that are less than a third, to a handful of communities that actually, for their own reasons, maintain more cash than 1 year's worth of cash flow worth. You don't want to have too much cash because then you're missing opportunities to invest in the city, but you definitely need to have enough that we're confident of our liquidity, even if there's a surprise, a shock, or a problem. Now, the other side of our financial position, of course, is the debt held by the city. I won't take you through every corner of this chart, but this gives you a sense of the two main sorts of debt. When we say business type, we're talking about city operations. So that's where the debt is secured by charges for services. Think of something like the utilities. So financially, the debt is secured because there's a knowledge that there will be future revenue sources from charges. Versus what we think of as governmental debt, which can be secured with revenue sources that are tax-based versus charge-based. So Parks Bond would tend to fall into that governmental category. Where do they go? Half of our debt has to do with economic development. When it comes to the sort of government style, the vast majority of what we would call our business type debt, which comes to about $100 million in total, is wastewater. And again, this is connected to the LTCP, the CSO project, and the fact that we're doing generational investments, but you got to fund them all at once. And so you take out a bond, you make the investment, and then we'll be paying that for many years. In per capita terms, that means we're at about $2,500 in debt per resident. Again, a little hard to gauge what that means without comparing it to our peers. Basically, it puts us smack in the middle or a little bit on the low end compared to peer cities. This can be a bit misleading, too. So Terre Haute has virtually no debt per capita. That's largely a consequence of the fact that they've had some very serious financial problems and have, I think, been less able to get debt in order to finance projects where it would make financial sense. Basically, you don't want to be too low on this list because that means you're missing opportunities to take advantage of low interest rates today. You don't want to be too high on this list because that means that you're building up more debt than you might be able to service. But we're comfortable being right among our peers who are, again, a little bit on the low end. In terms of what that does in our budget, I think the best way to look at this is to think about the percentage of our yearly expenditures that have to do with debt service. And right now, it is basically hovering around 10%, a little lower. Again, if you look at the league tables of our peers, this is a pretty common place to be. You do have some communities where it's a remarkably high percentage. For reference, I believe the federal government is somewhere in the neighborhood of 100%, but we do not structure our debt like the federal government. If you want to look at that, where that'll take you in the future, that's what the chart on the right is about. Basically what it's saying is if we didn't add any more bonds or add any more debt load, you'd see that go down year by year as various commitments mature, and so each year we would have less than the previous in debt payments. But that also gives you a sense of the headroom that we might have to add, because it's probably prudent to remain somewhere in that 10% neighborhood as time goes on. On to my favorite slide. If council members have seen me give this presentation any of the other 7 times, because for the 8th time out of 8, we have great news on this front. Once again, the city of South Bend has a AA bond rating. Among second-class cities in Indiana, there are only 3 others that have an equivalent or higher bond rating. All of them are comparatively wealthy suburbs of Indianapolis, and so I think it really is a tribute to the discipline and the difficult decisions made by the members of this council and by this administration and those going before us that we have this bond rating. I think the single best way to understand our fiscal position as a city is those 2 letters, because that tells you what outside agencies independently see when they look at our books, our finance, our revenue, our debt, our expenditures, our economy. And again, it's just very unusual for a community with relatively low income to have such a high bond rating, and I want to thank the council for your help in that, because it's allowed us to do things like get a 3% rate on the most recent parks bond, which just saves a lot of taxpayer dollars compared to servicing what the bond payments would be if we had, for example, a BBB or BB bond rating. One thing that I appreciate having foregrounded that our new controller, Dan Parker, thought was important for the council to see is our capital asset profile. So basically, this is everything the city owns, and it's depreciated into a net book value. So if we were to go on eBay and offer to sell every pipe, every lane mile of street, every snowplow, this podium perhaps, everything that has been capitalized by the city, comes to approximately $468 million in value. A really important number to balance that against is the average useful life, because of course the longer the life of our infrastructure, the less we have to spend in order to replace the amount of that net book value. That's varied over the years. This isn't maybe as wild a fluctuation as it looks like, because the axis is not zero. This is just to give you a sense of, to really tease out that those ups and downs. But basically it's been increasing. We think that's a good thing. This is basically the payoff when you make investments. So the downside to it is you have to spend money on it. The payoff is you increase the useful life of the capital you do have. On to the revenue and expenditures. So from an operational perspective, again, sorry that this is such an eye chart. Let me invite you to concentrate on a couple of things. One, just this total revenue and total expenditure number. These will fluctuate to some extent based on the addition or subtraction of a bond. So sometimes it looks like we're spending a whole bunch, or we got this huge amount of revenue, but what it really just means is that a bond came in, leading to a lot of cash, or because we're doing cash accounting, a capital investment that may be designed to last the next 30 years shows up on our books just that one particular year. The one thing, of course, we always do keep an eye on is this general fund level in particular. A general fund that by law has to be balanced every year, and what you can see is the expenditures are trending upward, but upward at a level that's not that far out of line with inflation. Revenue exceeded expenditures in all major funds last year, which is a sign of conservative budgeting and healthy revenue. When it comes to property tax collections, again, generally we've seen it on the rise. You do see for 2019 it looks a little lower than 2018. We're hoping this is just a matter of budget conservatism, because 2018 is an actual, 2019 is budgeted. And the DLGF, the State Department that gives us these estimates, they're always pretty conservative. But the good news is we saw quite a bump, if you look at 18 versus 17, more than we expected, between $3 and $4 million in additional property tax revenue. For those of us who believe that the total asset base of the city may be a little bit undervalued in terms of its assessment, we would hope to see that true up over time. So hopefully the actuals come in a little bit ahead of that. Income tax, I want to caution here, it's been great to see this increase. That's definitely been a part of how we made the books add up over the last years. I just want to caution that you can't count on this the way you count on property tax revenue, because property values are pretty stable. This really depends on how the economy is doing. And so as long as we're in recovery, as we've been for the better part of this decade, we can expect us to continue to grow. But the moment that there's a downturn, this will soften up, and we need to remember that in our financial planning. quick reminder of the employment of city personnel. So we are officially at 1,096 full-time employees. Fully half our full-time employees are in public safety, police, and fire. Another quarter is public works, and the balance is pretty much everything else. Of course, venues, parks, and arts swells to be one of the very largest departments in the city, but that's because of part-time and seasonal workers in the summer. The full-time number is quite a bit lower, and then that last eighth or so of the pie is the rest of us. We as a city have quite a bit fewer full-time employees than we did, and we will never, I suspect, have the number that we did prior to the property tax caps kicking in during Mayor Lickey's administration in that 2008-2009 period. I will say that sometimes these numbers can be a tad misleading because when, for example, the Potawatomi Zoo or the Century Center went from city-owned and operated to having a public-private partnership that took them off the city's books, but we're still funding some of those employees. But that being said, bottom line is we are holding the line on city workforce, which makes sense just in line with the American economy that because of technology, an individual worker is more productive than before, and so we can do the same job with fewer people. I'm very pleased to show you this slide. One of the biggest things that was a concern for us over the years, and I think is a concern for any organization where your biggest expense is personnel, is the dramatic increase in healthcare costs over the years. Over just between 2010 and 2014, it went up by about 50% in terms of a per employee basis. The good news is over the last 4 or 5 years, there are some years that actually went down for the previous year, and the overall trend across that spikiness is one of growth, but pretty modest growth, almost in line with inflation, which is extraordinary when you consider how much faster healthcare grows than the inflation rate normally. How did that happen? Well, certainly a big part of it has to do with the work that the city has done to reduce claim liability through things like the wellness program, the clinic, which we're very glad to see employees taking advantage of, and continuing to have really good work with our partners who help manage our claims process to really be sure that we're making the most of preventing expensive claims. Now, we are self-insured, so a single, very complicated medical case by one employee would be something you might notice on the budget the next year. But the overall trend, you can see how we just bent the cost curve, and we're going to need to bend it further in order to beat that fiscal curve that we're all worried about. I don't want to prolong the address by reciting everything, but I just wanted to kind of enter into the record a sense of the things that are really commanding a lot of our resources in 19, and point to how a lot of these are investments that pay off in the long run. The paramedicine program is about dealing with extremely expensive cases where we're making hospital runs, where a simple visit to somebody before it became an emergency might have headed that off. When you look at something like the investment in lead, again, we may not see it on the city's books, but the return to investment on a child not being lead poisoned is financially as well as morally very compelling. And you'll continue to see a number of different efforts and initiatives that some have bigger dollar signs than others, but all of them are investment in the quality of life, and I'm looking forward to describing them further in the state of the city. So, how are we doing against the fiscal curve? The fact that there will be a sunset in 2020 on South Bend, St. Joe County's status as an exception to the rule that allowed us to have 50 extra basis points on our property tax caps in some cases for the servicing of debt. The latest numbers suggest we are at about a $2 million drop to be expected in revenue from property tax levies in 2020 compared to 2019. Again, these are only estimates, but that's what we think we're seeing. It is a substantial number. It is not a terrifying number because we're getting ready for it for the last couple of years. But it's going to necessitate more tough choices in the 2020 budget that we're already beginning to picture and that we'll be bringing before the council this fall. Let me present the sort of ghost of Christmas future here. This is what happens if nothing changes. So we try to create our best estimate of what we call the business as usual scenario. So if everything grew the way it's growing, we didn't do any belt tightening, we didn't take any unusual measures. By definition, we estimate that the 2019 budget balance is perfect. Obviously, that won't quite happen, and if we're conservative enough, expenditures will actually be lower. But that's what we put in the book. And then you see the costs grow where the deficit is 6 million next year, grows to 8, swells closer to 10 before contracting due partly to debt beginning to roll offline. So there are some issues with operations that just need to be funded in a more sustainable way. In particular, we've really relied on Medicaid reimbursements to fund some of our EMS operations, and we're not sure that those will be as reliable as they have in the past. And again, the biggest thing we spend on is personnel. So wages, insurance, healthcare costs do continue to drive that. What are we going to do about it so that we don't see that big gap? First, again, continuing to really focus on keeping those healthcare costs low. We think that will allow us to continue beating the trend nationwide. Secondly, it continues to be the position of this administration that our tax assessments need to be more accurate. We've seen some work and some movement on the part of the county assessor that we think is addressing that, at least partially. This is not about everybody being higher or lower. This is about the fact that our bottom line gets better when the assessments are more accurate, for the simple reason that if you're over-assessed, you appeal, and if you're under-assessed, you keep it to yourself, and we never even knew you were there. I'm a little reluctant to use this terminology, but I'm going to use the word freeze, but then I'm going to say that it's soft. So what I mean by this is that any time somebody leaves a position, retires from the city or leaves city employment, we're going to take a hard look at that, and that's going to be required to come all the way up to the mayor's office before we sign off on replacing that person. If we see that the need is there, we will continue doing it, because the intent of that position being in the budget and the idea of us asking for you to authorize that budget for us is obviously that position matters. But we're not going to replace a position just because. If we realize that there's another way to cover down on that position during this belt-tightening period, we're going to pause and we're going to see if that work can be handled in another way. Fourth, we're going to continue working on anything we can do to just be a more efficient operation. The business analytics team in particular has given us a whole new level of visibility on city operations. We found all kinds of ways to tweak, refine, improve, adjust, and if we could find even 1% efficiency savings in our general fund, that gets us more than $500,000 off the bottom line. We've got a lot going on in purchasing. We're refining our purchasing process. We're using our purchasing power better. Also, capital budgeting is something we've never really done, to be honest, in a whole administration level. We look at capital budgets at a department level, but we've never really arrayed the entire thing. And this is something we would invite the council to partner with us on doing, and saying, okay, at a 3-year, 5-year budget level, how do we balance the needs of that garage upgrade with what we've got to do for a new firehouse, with what we're proposing for the Century Center, and really look at a capital budget the same way as we would for an operational budget citywide. Now, we're always looking at new possibilities for revenue, and we're going to continue looking for public-private partnerships if we think they would be responsible and if they would benefit the city's fiscal position. I am confident that if we're willing to make challenging but fair choices, that without dramatic cuts to services, we will be able to get to a very good fiscal position in 2020, and welcome the council's partnership in that. That brings us to the end of my presentation. Happy to field questions, again with the caveat that if I don't know the answer, I will either call on one of my colleagues or just take it down for us to get back to you. And if you prefer to do questions in writing, I understand that as well, because I want to be sensitive to time, but I'll turn it back to the council.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's good information. I would encourage council members to get with you or your department if they want to go in depth on anything within here. I will entertain 2 concise questions to the mayor on the information here in lieu of time. We'll start with Ms. Preston. Anything?
Comment and a question. I want to thank your administration as well as Councilwoman White. Having this briefing today just reinforces the tremendous job you all have done in keeping us all abreast of what's happening throughout the year. So appreciate that throughout that whole budgeting process, and continue to engage around issues like debt and the fiscal curve and things like that that have been a big concern for our constituents. So thank you for that. One question I had, one of those first slides, we were talking about the poverty rate, and you can answer it later or whatever, maybe it's an easy answer. It was exciting to see that it's going down. One question that came in my mind was a question of, is that reflection, or what's the balance of that being an increase in annual median income versus actually displacement because we don't have affordable housing and people who can't find or afford the housing leave? And I don't know how you calculate that or if you thought about that, but that's...
Yeah, it's a good question. We're trying to get more fidelity on the data. We do think that it's driven by real increases to that median. At the same time, we don't have individual level tracking, so while we don't see strong patterns of displacement, it may be that part of what we're seeing is that some people move into the city who have a higher median income or who add to the median income, but some of the people who've been there the whole time have not seen their incomes improve just yet.
Thank you.
Mr. McBride?
I'd like to say thank you, Mayor, and to administration for the engagement that you have had with council this year. I think the information has been very transparent and informative, and any questions that we have had, you've always gotten answers or addressed them. So I just say thank you and looking forward to continue partnering with you all and moving forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Brody?
Thanks for your great leadership and that of your staff. You know, the benchmark of the AA rating, you know, that's terrific. So appreciative of that. I will need some refreshment or follow-up from your staff on the Medicaid reimbursement piece. I know that we've had some conversations about that. I'm not so certain about the actual dollar impact that we're going to anticipate on that. And then, and my understanding is that that's pretty likely that we won't receive that. But if I'm wrong on that, if you could help correct me. And then, with regard to the road funding, some update on that in terms of that percentage and what we're actually looking for in messages to communicate downstate. I'd be happy to help on that.
Great.
And then I appreciate the consideration. Well, first of all, the cash benchmarking relative to other cities that Mr. Parker brought to this year's presentation. But I also really appreciate the capital budget looking at that citywide and then multi-year. And I know the process of this past financial budget process, was multi-year, and I really do appreciate that. I think as a community, we benefit from those longer views and the engagement of the discussion on that at a longer view and different levels. So thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, and we'll be sure to get you more information both on the Medicaid picture and the road funding.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll echo a little bit what Councilmember Broden said in the road funding piece. I would also like to help advocate for that as much as possible. So any additional information that you guys can, or that your office can provide, would be great. Thank you for what I think was a very comprehensive and just great presentation. I'd like to have a copy of it.
That's good answer.
Yeah. I think a lot of times there's some misunderstanding about the city's financial position, and I think there were some very clear, concise charts in this presentation that would help us as we go out and talk to folks about exactly where we're sitting. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, we'll circulate with the council, and maybe we can also put it on the open data portal in case residents are interested too.
Actually, Dan did already say that you all have it.
Oh, great.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilman Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, for your presentation tonight. A couple of things. Number one, you had talked about how the state is changing our road highway funding and what they have planned for, and that you said that we probably need to get a hold of state legislatures since we are in the middle of that time now. What's the plan for our council to assist you in doing that, and what's the efforts that we need? Do we need to have testimony from us individually down there? Do we need letters? What's your strategy to really help deal with that? That's a critical issue that you brought up, because we all did think that was going to be a lot more money than when we were jumping up and down on that. And then to get this curve with the other curve coming up makes you a little, queasy on stuff like that. And then the side thing on the second thing would be, it was interesting that Mishawaka is not rated with the double or any of the ratings, Mishawaka, Gary, and those other. Do you know why that Gary and Mishawaka choose not to be rated? So we may go to that question first, and then we'll come back with a strategy how we can engage our legislature, both the Democrat side and the Republican side, from this northern, and really with all the cities like us who are depending on that across the state.
Right, so I'll need to tap Dan on the question of other cities' public bond ratings. I know this came up earlier. Can you share a bit about why some cities might not show up there?
Sure, yeah. So Dan Parker, I'm the city controller, offices on 12th floor of this building. So Mishawaka, Gary, Muncie, I think there's a few other ones on there. They are now rated by S&P. They may be rated by other agencies. The ratings up there were S&P ratings, which are generally the ones that we share. Or it could be possible that they don't have general obligation debt. And those are general obligation debt ratings, in which case if they don't have general obligation debt, S&P has something to raise those.
So what they have, we're not aware of what rates they might offer when they go and do their loans, or like when they have to do the bonds that we had, how we got a discount on ours because of our great rating. What do they use as their assessment? Are you aware of anything?
So as bonds are issued, they're rated by the bond rating agencies. So if they were Mishawaka were to say, hey, we want to issue general obligation debt, that debt that they wanted to issue would get rated by the bond agencies on the basis of their fiscal position, just the same as South Bend is. But currently they don't have a public rating available. As of 2016, which was the latest data that we had up until we refreshed it for this presentation, Mishawaka was rated a AA-. But currently today they don't have a a rating available at all.
That's interesting. Thank you for that tidbit of information. I was, sometimes you hear that, our sister cities sometimes ahead of us. As a person who has sisters, I have sibling rivalry. All right.
Try not to be too competitive there, but,
go to your next question.
We love the idea that South Bend is the best in the region. To the other question of the state, so it looks like we'll continue to engage with AIM, formerly known as IACT, on anything that may come up legislatively. But if I understand it correctly, the adjustment that happened in terms of where those funds went was actually administrative, not legislative. So the legislature acted to increase and adjust the gas tax so that there was more funding available total. But then it went through the State Department of Revenue and DLGF, and there was some formula that decided how much of that would actually find its way to communities like ours, how much went into things like the Community Crossings Grant, which we benefited from among other communities, and how much of it just went right into INDOT and was going to the state roads. And of course, we have some preferences, even if it is going to go to state roads, over which state roads those might be. So we will reach back to you once we have a better sense of how that administrative process will play for the subsequent year, and really appreciate and welcome your eagerness to weigh in from a council perspective, because I think we'll really want our voices to be united.
It would be grateful so we can work along with you to advocate for sure, because we need it.
We do.
Thanks.
Mr. Gordy.
Thank you for this presentation once again this year. I think that I thanked you and the controller staff last year for the presentation and said you seem to be getting the hang of it. This one's even better. And it helps us working with you to establish not only our own priorities, our separation of wants from needs. One's always going to outpace the other. But we have to establish realistic goals and priorities. And like Mr. Teshka, I hope we can find some more money somewhere to do roads, because that's really an investment. The more we put off, the more it'll cost later. I mean, that's elementary. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thanks for the presentation, and thanks to all city staff for not only being here tonight, but for all your great work. Thank you.
I just have one question there. That one slide that you presented, I think it was in response to the curve, the 2020. You had a statement, business as usual.
Yes.
That was only being used as an example?
Yes, so this is basically a projection that says if we took no action at all, right?
But that's not the direction that we are moving towards.
Correct.
Because based on some of those areas that you indicated, that we will begin to respond in preparation for 2020. I would like to share with the audience that on March the 4th, we will have a more in-depth discussion regarding the fiscal cliff or curve, and that we will be talking about how this city has prepared for that, but also what types of strategies that we will have. So the public is definitely invited. We'll have a more in-depth discussion about that. as well.
Thank
Thank you.
I'll catch up to you.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So,
Thank you very much.
all right, thank you, Mayor. With that, we pretty much had our report from city offices, so thank you, Mayor. At this time, there is no committee of the whole. We have no bills to hear.
We probably need to announce which ones are not going to be heard.
Yeah.
Therefore, there are no third readings as well. I believe there is one, and we have to make a motion on it tonight, but sorry for the delay. 1915 will be postponed.
They gave a date, correct?
Next week, the 25th. So,
25th.
we'll get to that, to the motion. Okay, we'll turn to resolutions. Ms. Fowler, would you read 1903, please?
1903, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving and adopting the Southeast Neighborhood Master Plan.
Thank you. Is there a committee report?
Oh, that was me, but I'll take it, that's right. The Community Investment Committee met today and sends this forward with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a presenter?
Good evening, council members. Liz Meredith, Principal Planner with the Department of Community Investment with offices on the 14th floor of this building. The Department of Community Investment engaged with area residents, property owners, businesses, and other community partners in the development of the Southeast Neighborhood Master Plan. It was completed in 2015 and provides a framework for long and short-term improvements and a land use plan for the Southeast neighborhood.
Liz, let me just interrupt. Could you move that microphone a little closer to you, please?
Yep.
You're very shy. Thank you.
Though the plan was not formally adopted, the city and its community partners, including SOAR, 466 Works, and Bowman Creek Educational Ecosystem, have been actively implementing the plan. Some of the achievements to date include infrastructure improvements, including along Fellow Street, improvements to Bowman Creek, as well as in Ravenna Park, improved lighting through Light Up South Bend and a pilot lamppost program, and 466 Works constructing 2 new homes using federal funds. All these projects have been consistent with the community vision that was developed through the master plan process. We ask that the council approve the adoption of the Southeast Neighborhood Master Plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Council members, are there any questions?
Comments later?
Comments later. Very good.
Thank you.
No questions?
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Anybody wanting to speak in favor, please come to the podium for Resolution 1903. Hello, please state your name and address.
Good evening, council members. My name is Charlotte Pfeiffer. I reside at 1013 West Washington Street. I'm a member of the 466 Inc. Board. And as Liz mentioned, 466 Works we've been together for about 5 or 6 years. And what we wanted to do was to help revitalize that neighborhood that borders Sample Street, Michigan Street, Ewing Street, and Miami. And so that's a big area, of course. So we've cut it into quadrants, and we're going to work in one quadrant at a time. And we've been working with the neighbors, neighborhood associations, the city council. We've worked with Ivy Tech and all of those assets in that wonderful neighborhood. And I say that on purpose because one of the things that we want to do is all over the community and all over the nation, people do silly things, people do inappropriate things. But unfortunately, with that neighborhood, all you hear about are the bad things. And we want to make sure that there's a balance. Just like when bad things happen in Granger, Mishawaka, Indianapolis, people don't want, they're not reluctant to live there because they know the balance. And what you don't hear about in the southeast side is the balance. Literally, because we've been working there, we've built, of course, a couple of homes. One of them has been sold. It sold like within the first 3 months. And actually, 3 different families tried to buy the second one, but they're over revenue. We hope that the next homes that we build and revitalize will be more open to people's incomes. But the thing I wanted to say the most, that maybe others won't say, is that because we've been working in that neighborhood, other investors are interested. And so we foresee in the next 3 years that a person can be born in the southeast side, go to preschool, go to elementary school, graduate from Riley High School, go to Ivy Tech, get an associate's, go down the road and get a bachelor's from IUSB, and then go further down the road and get a PhD, and then buy a house and stay here in South Bend.
Right.
So that's our very modest goals. But we really are significantly down the road on this. So I hope that you will pass this tonight, and I want to thank the city and everyone who contributed to this plan that we've been waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Conrad Damon, 718 East Broadway. It is my neighborhood that is the plan has been made for. Our neighborhood organization, SOAR, has been engaged with the other partners, 466 Works, Bowman Creek, and the city in improving our neighborhood. And many wonderful things are going on, and we hope that they will continue. Ms. Meredith mentioned a few of those things. There are other things currently going on that we hope to soon be able to announce and celebrate. And we look forward to really making the master plan the future of our neighborhood. And the future of our neighborhood, we think, is bright. And what we want to say to the Common Council is that with this master plan, you are helping us create a good, solid neighborhood for working-class families in South Bend. And that's what South Bend needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gary Gillott. I'm with the Bowman Creek Educational Ecosystem. I live at 1904 Lilac Trails Court in South Bend. The Bowman Creek Educational Ecosystem is more than Notre Dame. It's about 15 different universities and secondary education institutions all partnering together to do community engaged projects. We do projects with the neighborhood, not for them or to them. And so that collaborative spirit, working with Venues, Parks and Arts, working with Public Works, Department of Innovation and Technology, our council rep is often involved with the projects. We've attracted some interest from the Pokagon Band to the Potawatomis. There have been a number of improvements. We don't just do the creek. The Bowman Creek Educational Ecosystem is about talent meeting purpose and adding capacity to all the not-for-profits, all the stakeholders who work in our neighborhoods to improve quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak against 1903, please come to the podium. Seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion before motion. We'll start with Ms. Preston.
Simply want to say that it is so encouraging to see the collaboration, the connection, and the communication that's happening for the southeast side. Even though this plan was not formally adopted, it takes this kind of initiative commitment from all community partners, public and private. It's just exciting to see you kind of kept the ball going. And thank you to Sharon McBride, Councilwoman McBride, for making sure she kind of jumped in, didn't she? And really connected with the community and has just, I've heard several of you make mention of her level of engagement, which I think is part of the inspiration for keeping the glue together and keeping this ball rolling. So thank you, Councilwoman McBride. Thank you, all of the community, because that's really what it's going to take to make this city great.
Ms. McBride?
I'm the proud representative of a portion of the master plan. I'm pleased to have been a part of the SOAR board prior to me even being elected into this position. So I am very proud to have worked, with you all, and now a member of the 466 Works board. We've been working and engaging with Bowman Creek and you guys for a long time. So I am very, very excited to see this plan come to the floor, and thanking the city for all of the meetings that you all attend, for the SOAR group and the 466 board and Bowman Creek, everything that you have put your efforts into. And without it being officially adopted, still working the plan has been, second to none, because you didn't have to follow the plan that if there was no official vision. So I commend you all to continue to work hard and continue to work hard. So I'm excited about tonight and hope that it passes.
Just a couple comments. Thank all of those who have been consistently showing up, contributing to the vision, communicating, collaborating. It really is no small undertaking to bring a plan forward, and with this level of detail. So there's a lot that's, backloaded to actually get it, to the point where it's actually on paper. And as I said, it's no small undertaking, either on administration, staff side, council member side, particularly the council members from within the district, but then, as I said, the various partners, and all the way down to the individual citizen who has participated in this process thus far. In terms of kind of the next steps forward, this formalizes that shared vision in a way. I take it, and I think other council members take it as an opportunity to give direction, but then also an opportunity that we can build on it and kind of make sure, I think the word is evergreen that comes to mind, that it gives us overall direction, but it's not a stale document, and it's not, to sit on a shelf. And certainly it's pathway thus far in terms of the funding that we've already dedicated to it, would speak to that. But in terms of up-tempoing that funding and keeping that momentum going, I look forward to doing that, to the balance of this year. And I do think whether it's this plan, and I shared this earlier in committee, whether it's this plan or any plan within our that's a shared vision from our neighborhoods, that regular pace of reviewing it, evaluating it, and making sure, that we're meeting some of the implementation timeframes or adjusting that as needed is really important part of the discussion. So I value the plan and its vision. I'm very excited this many years out to finally give it our seal approval, and I look forward to opportunities to work with the administration, hear the priorities of the neighborhood in terms of additional funding going forward.
Excellent. Mr. Tester. Tough that.
Just thank you guys for bringing this forward. And I know I met with the planning team a couple weeks ago now, and they've got a ton on their plate, and they do amazing work. And so thank you guys for this, and happy to finally get this thing approved.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you so much. It's going to make life a lot easier on area plan. That we actually have a plan that we're talking about that has been approved. So it's a good plan. And thank you for all of you who have come to advocate for it. So I'm very glad that you are doing that, and I look forward to supporting it, especially since you're my next door neighbor, and it's from the 6th District on my east side. So as the stronger the southeast gets, the southwest gets, and there's a section of the southeast that's in ours. So we're very happy to have the south side get stronger. All right.
Yeah, real quickly, 50 years ago, this area was burning down. Arson was rampant, especially on the very near southeast side where Ivy Tech and some other things now exist. And I just want to compliment people like Conrad Damien, the residents there who have kept the faith and who have continued to advocate for improvements over the years, and it's because of their dedication and hard work that I think through one administration to another, one council to another, that we're able to say, gosh, we can actually see some improvement and potential return of a really quality neighborhood. 45 years ago, when I worked for the street department, we we call this place the Twilight Zone, that area, because anything was liable to happen. And I worked the midnight shift for a while over there, and it was. I found a bullet hole in my street sweeper one night.
Self-induced?
But no, you're not. Anyway, I can tell stories, but it's not the time for it. So anyway, thank you for all that's been done, and thank you, Conrad, and all the folks there in your area.
I'll just say thank you to everyone involved.
I would like to add my words of thank you not only to the administration and the planners, but also to the community stakeholders, the citizens, the various neighborhood associations, and just coming together to make a commitment for their neighborhood. And this really illustrates when individuals come together, they're committed and they're able to stick to it, that you see what is before us. This is not just a plan or a document that's going to go on the shelves. As I said during the committee, this is a living document. It's going to guide future discussions, priorities, and also funding. And I can see the change now within that particular area. So again, when individuals come together, we work collaboratively together, we're willing to think beyond the box, we'll have this type of plan that we'll be taking action on tonight. So I just thank all of the partners, citizens, the neighborhood associations, everyone making the statement, we're not going to move out of our neighborhood. We're going to stay and make it better. And this is what we have now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of this council?
Motion to send to the full council favorable.
Second.
It's a resolution. It's
resolution.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Ms. Fowler, roll call.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka?
All right.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Gordy?
Aye.
Councilmember Furley?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you. We move on to 1908. We move on to 1908.
1908, a resolution confirming the adoption of a declaratory resolution designating certain areas within the city of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 2920 West Sample Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46619, as an economic revitalization area for purposes of a 6-year vacant building tax abatement for SWGS Properties, LLC.
Is there a presenter?
President Scott, I'll be doing 1908, 1910, and 1912 together.
Make a motion to hear 1908, 1910, and 1912 together.
I'll second that. For purpose of public.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ms. Fowler, would you read 1910 and 1912?
1910, a resolution confirming the adoption of a declaratory resolution designating certain areas within the city of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 2920 West Sample Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46619, as an economic revitalization area for purposes of a 6-year real property tax abatement for SWGS Properties, LLC.
1912?
A resolution confirming the adoption of a declaratory resolution designating certain areas within the city of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 2920 West Sample Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46619, as an economic revitalization area for purposes of a 5-year personal property tax abatement for SWGS Properties, LLC.
Since these are confirming, Dan, go ahead. You can be brief.
I will do my best, thank you. Dan Buckenmeyer, Director of Business Development, 14th floor of this building. SWGS Properties is by name Grace Steel, a small startup steel fabricator with a great sustainable model, currently operating out of a very small shop in Mishawaka, but looking to move to South Bend and expand significantly. The petitioners are here. I'll skip through a lot of this. Again, as you recall from last meeting, we are doing a stack of tax abatements, and I'll get into where they go, but combining vacant, real, and personal to assist them in the best way we can so that they can take this about 8.5 acre plot and building, about 70,000 square foot building, on West Sample Street, just the other side of Oliver. Take property that's really otherwise crumbling infrastructure and revitalize it and make it into a steel production facility. They'll be putting, well, I'll just jump ahead, we have some pictures that show the current state, and I'll show you some future state in a moment, and this is some of the equipment that they will invest in. But in short, their full investment in this project will be well over $2 million. They will bring in 16 new full-time jobs with solid payroll, solid hourly and salaried positions. They're also retaining 4 full-time jobs with the payroll as indicated. The full amount of the abatement is about, across the stack of all 3 of these abatements that I mentioned, is about $213,000 in total. They still will pay at least about $55,000, $56,000 is our estimate over the course of 2 6- and 1 5-year abatement. The key is in this slide. I think the important thing, and I'll very much simplify this, the key takeaway here is that, as the red numbers show, with no action, if we didn't provide this support, if they didn't come into South Bend and revitalize this building, that property would provide an estimate of $200,000 over the next 10 years. But again, that would be a crumbling piece of infrastructure. It would probably decline from there. That's an early estimate. We actually added about $20,000 to that, so it would actually be about $264,000 that would be brought onto the tax rolls even throughout the course of the abatement and then into the 10-year window. So it's a true win-win for the city, for the company. And then we've just got a few pictures here of what they foresee is in terms of elevations. I'll leave it at a nice before and after picture here and open it up to questions and or welcome the petitioner.
Comments after it?
Dan, per the confirming, were there anything that changed from the last time you guys were here?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions right now? No? Would the petitioners please come forward? Just make a very brief statement.
David Andre, 21601 Durham Way, Bristol, Indiana.
Pam Andre, 21601 Durham Way, Bristol, Indiana.
As you guys recall from our last presentation, Grace Steel was founded by Pam 3 years ago, and it's grown very rapidly. It takes steel that oftentimes otherwise would end up as scrap or secondary material, process it into good steel and parts, supplies the RV, the trailer industry, and ships as far away as Arkansas and Missouri right now. So yeah, it's growing. We would not be able to be in this facility and pay for the renovations if it were not for the abatements and the support of the city. So we appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioners at this time? Nope, we'll come back for comment. Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of Resolution 1908, would you please come forward? 1908, 1910, or 1912 for public hearing.
Jason Benicki, Criswell, 3822 4th Street. As I said, I guess it was about 4 weeks ago at the committee meeting, very excited for this. This is definitely something we need on that side of town. And I like the way that we're doing it in a much more phased-in abatement than some of our other ones where we kind of go 100, 100, 100, 100 all the time. So it doesn't put the city on the full hook either. Allows us to get some of that tax revenue a little bit sooner. And, you know, again, it's an area where we need these kind of jobs, so I'm excited to see it there. We need to make this happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak against 1908, please come to the podium. Seeing none, back to council for comment first. Anything?
Just, oh, thank you.
Okay.
I'll just say a quick thank you for your investment, and thank you for your patience tonight. I know it's been a little bit longer than usual, so
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Broden?
Yes, thank you. After last week's, or whatever, the past presentation, that's safest to say that, it wasn't last week. Local workforce recruitment and training was something we had spoken about, and I wanted to see if there was any additional conversations with our department or staff on those two objectives. Or do you anticipate that?
We anticipate it. We haven't had those yet, but we did talk about working with the urban enterprise zone and through resources like that to make sure that, and they have voiced a commitment to seeking local employees first, if you will.
And I really appreciate that intentionality relative to this, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Preston?
Green economy, recycling, love it. Jobs for neighbors, thank you so much. This is what we need in our community.
Thank you.
I move for the adoption of...
One more. Mr. Davis.
Again, Mr. Buckner talked about the benefits of what would it be if we did not do anything versus what we do if we do something, and that was significant. Another key thing that is significant is when you bring in developers or business owners like the Andres, who not only plan to bring jobs to everybody, but they plan to build up the neighborhood. And sitting there in about 10 to 15 minutes, less than 10 minutes, I could tell they weren't just people who were trying to, bring another business in, but they were people who this is home. And you felt that, And they had questions about the neighborhood, trying to build it up, and it's going to be Sample Street's going to be better because of that. And that's what I liked about it. When I have driven past now, I look at it like, it's getting better. I can feel it, because you walk in there and see it, and you see those pictures. Ever since I walked out of there, it was real nice. So I want to thank y'all for being who you are, and the story you told me about how you've bounced back from a lot of the challenges you faced, and, name it grace. So by grace, we will get past tonight. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Horty, you were going to...
I was just going to make a motion for the adoption of 1908.
Second.
Ms. Fowler, roll call.
Councilmember McBride? Aye. Councilmember Rhodes?
Aye.
Councilmember Tensley?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Gracefully, aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Councilmember Furley?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Make a motion for the adoption of 1910.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Brogan?
Aye.
Councilmember Tensley?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Gordy?
Aye.
Councilmember Furley?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Motion for the adoption of 1912. Second.
Councilmember Tensley?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye. To our new neighbors.
Councilmember Gordy?
Aye.
Councilmember Furley?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Brogan?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you. We will now move on to... can I have a motion on 1915?
I move that 1915 be moved to our December,
February 25th?
we're going to push it way out there, yeah. February 25th, for,
Continue.
yeah, we're going to continue it.
That's what I said. There's a second for that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We'll move to first readings. Ms. Fowler, 0519, please.
First reading on an ordinance to vacate the following described property: the east-west portion of Bluebell Street, 29.8 inches in width, running west approximately 303 feet from the right-of-way of South Olive Street to parcel number 018-8102-3875.
I move that this be sent to Public Works and Property Vacation for second reading and public hearing on 2/25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 0619, please.
0619, first reading on an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance for property located at 629, 705, and 713 North Notre Dame Avenue, Councilman in District Number 4 in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
I move this be sent to the Area Plan Commission for their meeting on 3/19, and then back to our Zoning and Annexation Committee for our meeting on 3/25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Now to unfinished business. Is there anything under unfinished business? Great, we'll move to new business. Any other new business? Great, we'll move on to privilege of the floor. This time, privilege of the floor. This is where individuals who wish to address the council must state their name and resident address. Individuals are limited to 3 minutes only. The maximum time limit for this portion of the meeting shall be 30 minutes. Individuals may address only issues with the council has jurisdiction. Individuals are not permitted to address any topic that was on the agenda tonight. And I will assign any topics raised to individuals or council department committee chairs or to the city as needed and relevant to the common council or the city. Thank you. With that said, please state your name and address. You are given 3 minutes, and Gavin Furlick will time you and give you a 30-second warning before you're done.
Thank you. Good evening, Council, President, and Council, South Bend Common Council. My name is Tom Smyslow, 51042 Prairie View Way, South Bend, Indiana, former German Township Neighborhood Association President. I know we don't live in the city of South Bend, but we do have some German Township neighbors here tonight. And we were down here in 2017 to discuss rezoning of the land north of Adams Road and what happened to be the consequence of that decision. We all pointed out that the proper infrastructure is not in place to handle all the truck car traffic in that area. Our worst fears have materialized since with the completion not of one building, but 2 buildings since the last time we were down here on the rezoning ordinance. We now have more traffic with speeding cars, large trucks, light and air pollution, noise, overweight trucks going down county roads, trash, lack of enforcement of the county or the city on any of these issues created by the developer and the city council that voted for it. We're not against jobs. I've been a labor leader for years, and I'm surely not against a job. I would really hope that jobs would be created would be good jobs, so people that could have a sustainable living on. We need good jobs in this area. I was an employer one time, and I know how hard it is to get workers and qualified people this day and age. So it's really hard to get people to go to work and take a marginal job. And we need good jobs in this community. And I would hope that the jobs were created because of that infrastructure improvement over there and buildings that would be good paying jobs. We again ask that no further building take place until the proper infrastructure be put in place and to find a way to keep the encroachment of this project out of our neighborhood here in German Township. This is brought about because of the latest news in regard to the, I'm trying to think of the name of the company. Amazon that was going to take over one of the buildings there or move into part of it or whatever. And also the report is there 2 or 3 more buildings are going to be built out there. I talked to Tim Scott a little bit about this on the phone the other day, and when we got the news of this, and it's really upset us. We talked about neighborhoods down here tonight and working together in neighborhoods. I know you don't work with the city. I mean, we don't live in the city, but your decisions are impacting our livelihood in that community in German Township. And I talked to Bobby Kay, our county councilman, and I would hope that something could be done, that we could get the neighbors together, and talk about what could be done to alleviate this problems that we're having out there. And it's only going to grow by more of these companies, and I would hope this Amazon thing could be held off with how many more cars and trucks are going to be in that regard of that, until we find out what we're going to do with the infrastructure. The infrastructure is in place right now. If you go into that park, that industrial park, which it is now, I guess, or warehouses, it's only one way in and one way out. Well,
thank you.
please let us get together and do something about the problem.
I have an update for you.
Pardon me?
You want to turn your letter in, or?
No, I just might.
Thanks. Next name and address.
Jesse Davis, P.O. Box 10205, South Bend, Indiana. I come up here tonight with basically a similar situation to what I've brought up here many times before. We had a issue with the mayor's past chief of staff had some city workers in her yard put a patio in. I brought up one time that a contractor had damaged the property during a sewer repair, and we had several city employees out there for days and days repairing a concrete porch and a sidewalk that should have been on the contractor's to-do list, not on the taxpayers. Phil St. Clair's son utilizing a city building for 6-7 years to run his business out of. We had a double billing contractor in town. There's been so many things that go on, and it gets brought up. A lot of them, there were state police investigations, supposedly some federal investigations, and for some reason everything dies. Seems like every time something dies down, something new pops up. I got a call this week. Tim Scott, you can assign this one to yourself over in your district. 1751 Portage, South Bend. We got a crew of park department guys over there with a big old park department truck, and they're trimming trees on private property. Park department doesn't do that, man. I've made numerous calls to get trees trimmed when we were trying to fix a sewer, and we were told we don't do that. That's the homeowners. Well, the tree's in the parkway, and it needs trimmed or it needs removed so we can excavate the sewer and fix it. We don't do that. That tree, even though it's in the parkway, it's up to the homeowner. They have to hire a private contractor. I've got a copy of the city ordinances here about the trees and the trimming of the trees. We don't trim trees for private properties. It doesn't happen. That's up to the homeowners. So I don't understand why we've got crews out here at a private property, once again, city trucks, city crews. You can see them clearly in the photographs. I got video too, if you'd like, I can send that to you. Working on people's private property. So I'd like you to look into this.
All right. Thank you. Next name and address.
Samuel Brown, 222 East Navarre Street. We try to be brief, I know everybody want to go home. 1408 Elwood. I sit in a code enforcement meeting, which was pretty lengthy. And my main concern is that I walked away with is the taxpayers will have to clean up 1408 Elwood. And the code enforcement guy that was there, he estimated $1.5 million that we're going to have to dish out to clean some of it up, not all of it. That really concerns me. That's a large amount of money. If we get it cleaned up, will our owner of the land still have a chance to own the land, or will we own the land? But anyway, the cold weather going to go and leave pretty soon. And we need this in place. The citizen should know what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to get it cleaned up, and when will it start. This is a very serious issue. We've been fighting for a long time. It's time to bring it to an end. Because we're tired of looking at it. And we got some real safety conditions on it with the large smokestacks. How are we going to take them down? I mean, we need a demolition crew in there. They're going to probably charge us a lot of money to bring them stacks down where it'll be safe for the public. So, Mr. Scott, this is your area. Can you get that information back to us? Because that's going to be one of my top priorities, watching this all the way through. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next name and address.
Jason Benicki, 3822 4th Street. I was reading an article the other day, and I found it kind of interesting in terms of how we do things in the city. I was talking about bike lane infrastructure, how cities choose what lanes get paved, what gets additional lighting, things like that. And ultimately what they found, and if you look at the way we do things in this city, is that we tend to focus on more affluent areas. They get the separated bike lanes, they get well-lit bike lanes. Yet, the people who actually ride their bikes the most are usually those in the low-income areas, because they use them to get back and forth to work. So if you remember about last year, I talked about how bad Western Avenue is. Yeah, we have bike lanes, but the road never gets swept, so there's debris constantly for these people who have to ride their bikes. There are individuals that go down Lincoln Way where there's hit or miss lighting down there for riding their bikes back and forth to work. Yet, if you go downtown where nobody's out there at night riding their bikes other than people for just their entertainment, we have separate bike lanes, we have well-lit infrastructure. You look at all of our park trails that are well-lit. So our challenge has to be, as we go forward, that when we make these decisions on where to do bike lanes and how to do them, that we not just look at where people use their bikes for enjoyment, but how we look at the people who use their bikes as their primary mode of transportation. I think we have a lot of opportunity to do better there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good job. 837 South 24th Street, South Bend, Indiana. River Park. I got a letter. I sent everybody on the council a letter. Did you see that? And I take it, I'm running. I just go. They hit the gun and I take off. And if there's no obstructions, I say, good, I win. So when they said, is there anything you need? I needed a website. They say you need a website. So the rest must be okay. And I'm thinking, my prayers have been answered. I saw the mayor today. He talked to me and he says, we got a green light for the green program. Let's get it done. I say, okay. He says, we're 100% out of debt. Mayor Mishawaka, $26,000 for 3 trees. Do you know we have 12, actually 16 we have, but 12 we have in that circle, 11. And if you just take 4, 12 goes into 3, 26, 4 times 3 trees, 12 trees times 4, 26 times 4, do the math, over 100,000 investment. I'm saying that we have St. Hedwig's here. We have a lot of Catholics. It's always 50-50. Good Child, it's $4,900 to get the stones, Mother Earth stones, in front of the tree, just like here. You put that up there, and there's no mess. And people say, why are you putting up that beautiful screen? And you don't even have anything that we're supposed to interact with. We'll have interactive stones, Mother Earth stones, in every single one of a path where the administrators came all the way from the West Coast, L.A., all the administrators came out of Michigan and said, you can double. Now this is something that the mayor likes, double the earnings of people coming through the turnstile at the zoo, because they want to come to an interactive park that they can all have an app. The people say you can't have an app. I don't know anything about an app. So I tell the people, I know nothing about websites, nothing about app, and I got a flip phone, so I can't really take pictures or go anywhere. Can you help me? They said, if you need help, that's great. The point is that stones can be there tomorrow. The money is there. 100% debt-free. We have done 3 coatings. $135 a 5-gallon. It takes 3 coatings to do it. Comes out to over $5,000, 100%. That's with Victor's, cherry picker that does it. That's with me painting every single one of them. We've maintained them for 7 years. How much did it cost the city? Zero. And they say, you're going to do all the streets, and it's going to be 0?
30 seconds.
Cost to the city? I want that program. Mayor gets out his pocket. How much is this going to cost me? 0. I want that program. Why isn't it here then? Somebody on the council can probably give me a good answer. 11 stones next to 11 carved trees, 20 to 40 foot tall, in a circle. The buses come in the spring. They all get out, the children to see the zoo, eat, and then go in the interactive park, and they read it, and the teachers have the
Time is up.
They tell them what's on each tree, message.
Thank you, Rob.
Can we have it okay? Yes? Who do we need to work with?
We'll get back to you on that, Rob.
What? That's what Aaron Perry said. Come see me. Okay. Thank you.
Well, part of the privilege of the floor. Thank you. Next, name and address.
Wendy Wolf, 51180 Orange Road, South Bend, Indiana, German Township. I just want to reiterate what he said, but basically, I guess we know the development's going to happen. We're not stopping that. I guess what I would like to see, it was kind of hard tonight, we're talking about revitalization of neighborhoods, and since we're not in the city, we just feel excluded, like we don't count, like we're a lesser citizen than everybody else. And it's really hard, because I lived out there my whole life, my school's gone, the neighborhood's going downhill, and nobody really cares. And it's a really beautiful neighborhood, and it was a country neighborhood, and it's changing, and we can all accept and live with that. But somebody from this group of people needs to reach across the community lines of county, city segregation and help us learn how to live in a new environment and make us feel safe and still want to stay in our homes. Because I'm about a block from the Michigan state line, and every day I'm thinking about moving to Michigan. And I don't think you guys really want people to want to live out of the state. And I'm not trying to be extremely emotional. I've got a 30-year career here. I've lived here almost my whole life, minus 15 years when I lived in Iowa with my parents for a move. And I'm an educated person. I know people up here. I know Professor Buttigieg's son, Pete, because I worked with his dad. And anyway, I just want somebody to make a concerted effort to embrace us and make us feel like we count. Because it's really hard when everybody wants to revitalize cities. That's great. But at the same time, we're getting rolled over like a steamroller out there, and nobody seems to care, or they don't want to care. So please, keep us in the conversation and make us feel like we actually are people that have a voice. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Next, name and address. Mr. Brown?
Joe Augustino, 24777 Adams Road. I've lived on Adams Road since 1974. I've driven on Adams Road since 1974. I don't like to drive on Adams Road anymore, especially at 7 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, and 11 at night. The new factories actually bisect Sherman Township. Mr. Smiley's over there by Portage. I'm over by Orange Road. But the point is, at certain times of day, it's so dangerous because there's not proper adaptation. It hasn't changed to keep up with 200 or 300 cars get off work at one time and choose to run a stop sign blatantly, and I know the police have been asked to come down there, and they get away with it. They're going to keep doing it. And it hit me personally, when a 16-year-old girl was going to school at 7 in the morning, crossing the bridge. A factory's getting off. She thinks she's going to get hit by some other car. She slows down, and they hit her, and it's a hit and run, and it's your daughter. That's my daughter that got hit. And this is not the first time or last time that's happened. I think somebody's going to die on Adams Road. So that's the point. So yes, the progress is there. It's messing up the countryside, but they need to adapt the traffic flow so nobody dies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
My name is Lawrence Day, Larry Day. I live at 22500 Adams Road, and I would like to address the councilwomen and the councilmen. Whose responsibility is for the infrastructure over there? Is it Holiday or is it the city? I don't know. At one point, there was talk about opening up the Adams Street, that bridge area, and making interchange in there. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology. I also like to bring up the other point. You put FedEx, which this is very exciting, by the way. I'm not here to complain. Exciting. FedEx down here, possibly Amazon down here. In the last 2 years, the city has gotten all this building here. It's a great development. I don't know what political capital we gain out of that, what kind of taxes or anything, but my thought is, you've got all this business down here, FedEx trying to get in and out of one street, and you've got this other business down here that's possibly going to get out. Where is the structure for them to move? I want to know something here. I want to know if they're buying into what you have here, thinking that they're going to have a way to get their movement of their traffic, of their goods, and it's not there. I mean, is it possible these folks who have whatever arrangement they have with the city would get up and walk away because they said, gosh, the road structure is lousy here? Have you seen the interchange there where Brick comes out at 70, comes up and around on the bypass? Every time I come up there, that is so worn out. Whose responsibility is that? The state? I don't know. The city? But I want to say this, I really appreciate coming in from the south of town, and you see the flags when you get near the casino, you've got the city of South Bend light. This is the northwest section coming in the other direction. Why can't we have some semblance of South Bend from that direction with some flags and get that intersection straightened out and figure out how to deal with the congestion, because I think it's going to backfire on us as a city. And I don't even live in the city, I live in the county.
Thank you. Name and address, sir.
Hi, Jeff Nicholas. I used to live at 23821 Adams Road. That's the house right next to Dillon Drive, where 600 to 900 cars come in and out a day, and probably at least 100 big trucks. And you're going to continue on going north. And when we were up here talking about where the road, how close to the house was going to be, the road was going to be kept 50 feet away. Well, I didn't realize you were going to dig the ground up 30 feet, 25 feet deep, right next to my fence, to lay the pipeline in for the whole business. And then when the water came up, they dug it up 3 or 4 times because they didn't get the plumbing in properly. And by the time all the excavators left and the compactors and everything else, the basement of my house is now caving in, so I'm not living in that house right now.
Wow.
So, you wrecked where I lived and grew up for 60 years.
Wow.
And when you said you were going to stay 50 feet away, you didn't. I thought when you said you were going to start over here at 50 feet, you weren't going to dig up my fence. It's 25 feet from the house. And when you got 40,000-pound excavators compacting the mud, it caved the basement of my house in. I said, what am I supposed to do with that? I called my insurance company. They told me, oh, we don't do that. So do I call the lawyers and discuss it that way? Who do I sue? City? Great Lakes Capital? Majority Builders? Where's it go? I can't live there. The traffic? You got more coming in. There's nothing left. You got no way in and out of that traffic nightmare that I brought up crossing Adams Road. I said, that's going to be an impossible deal. You better build a bridge there or something. And I heard somebody said they were going to put a stop sign at Mayflower and Adams. Well, that'll slow them down. So, that's all I got to say right now.
Okay, thank you. Last one.
Sharon Benicki, 3822 Ford Street. I'm just here to thank whoever helped Martin's Greenhouse on Western Avenue get the flower contracts for the Western Avenue planters. She announced it on Facebook that she got the contract, however it happened, and the planters were dropped off, and she is ecstatic. And I know the West Side residents are ecstatic that the city is finally doing business with a small, local-owned business in the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. I have a question. Now, is this, you said something about when we have people speak at the privilege of the floor that you can assign things?
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Okay, I'd like to make sure that we get this issue with the folks on
We understand
County.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.
So whoever has public works to do that.
We'll come back. We'll come back.
Oh, okay, so really,
We have an extension. That's County.